Hello, curious minds, and welcome to Documentary for Sleep. If you're here, it probably means your body is tired, but your mind is still wide awake, searching for something calm to hold on to. Or maybe you just want a gentle voice to keep you company in the background while the day slowly fades away. Whether you're lying in bed, letting yourself drift toward sleep, listening while cooking, showering, or even working a late-night shift with headphones on, this is your little pause. A space to slow down and wander backward through science and memory. Tonight's story isn't about fantasy powers like flying or invisibility, but about something real, something inside every one of us, the quiet superpower of the human body. Grounded in biology, evolution, and the deep history of our species, this channel shares soft science, not wild speculation. We don't have all the answers, but we do have the bones, the muscles, the sweat, and the questions. And if you drift off somewhere in the middle, that's more than okay. Your body will still be listening, and the story will wait for you. I've left timestamps in the description so you can easily find your place tomorrow, because this entire journey from beginning to end is worth hearing in full. And if this kind of calm, long-form storytelling helps you learn, focus, or simply relax after a loud day, consider liking this video and subscribing. It helps the channel reach more curious sapiens like you, who find peace in both knowledge and quiet. If you feel like sharing, tell us how you listen. Are you winding down in bed, studying in silence, or working somewhere far away in the night? And as always, stay curious, stay calm. Imagine yourself for a moment standing naked on an African savanna. No clothes, no tools, no weapons. The sun beats down on your fragile skin. In the distance, a shadow moves. The air, once still, now carries a low-frequency vibration that you feel in your ribs. How long would you last? An hour? A single minute? By the raw metrics of biology, your fate seems sealed. You are a soft, slow, defenseless thing in a world of hard, fast, and sharp things. Biologically, we are a collection of deficiencies. We arrive in this world unfinished, dependent for years, a stark contrast to a newborn wildebeest stumbling to its feet within minutes. Our skin is a thin membrane, easily torn. Our teeth are blunt pegs, useless for rending hide or crushing bone. We lack the crushing strength of a great ape, the terrifying speed of a big cat, the armored hide of a rhinoceros. We are, in the purest anatomical sense, fragile. Our genetic blueprint seems to have traded innate weaponry for something else entirely, leaving us exposed to the elements and the food chain. And yet, the archaeological record tells a different story. A story not of fragility, but of profound, stubborn resilience. While other, mightier beasts have risen and fallen, Homo sapiens did not just survive, we wandered. From the frozen steppes of Siberia to the arid heart of Australia, from the humid rainforests of the Amazon to the highest plateaus of the Andes, our footprints are etched into the dust of every continent. We weathered the climatic chaos of ice ages, the cataclysmic ash winter following the Toba supereruption, and brutal millennia of drought. The evidence is there, in stone tools found in impossible places, and the faint traces of campfires lit against the immense darkness of a prehistoric night. Our bones, found alongside the mammoths we hunted, whisper a paradox. The weakling became the ubiquitous. This journey from vulnerable to ubiquitous finds its modern expression in our absolute dominion over the environment. Today, we do not simply inhabit ecosystems, we reshape them to our will. We have built pressurized capsules to live in the void of space and engineered vessels to withstand the crushing pressures of the abyssal ocean. We have turned the most inhospitable deserts green with agriculture and built glittering cities where nothing but ice and rock should exist. The same species that once shivered in the cold now designs the climate of its own dwellings. The physical weakness remains, but it has been rendered utterly irrelevant by our actions. This presents a puzzle, a beautiful contradiction that lies at the heart of our existence. If we were so weak, why did we not vanish like so many other, more robust species? How did this particular body, lacking claw, fang, or fortitude, not only endure, but ultimately conquer? The answer cannot be found in a single muscle or a lone tooth. It must lie elsewhere, in something less tangible, but far more potent. Could it be that true? Strength was never about the body's armor, but about the mind's ability to imagine armor? That survival was less about the force of a jaw and more about the force of an idea? What if our greatest weapon was not something we were born with, but something we learned to hold? Without claws, we learned to fracture a stone until its edge could slice through tendon and hide. Without fangs, we sharpened sticks into spears that could fly true and strike from a distance, turning a frail body into a lethal projectile launcher. Without the strength to overpower a mammoth, we devised traps and strategies, using cunning as our net and patience as our club. We tamed the very terror of the wilderness, fire, and turned it into a tool for warmth, protection, and transformation. It was not brute force that made us the planet's most prolific predators. It was this incredible ability to externalize our intentions, to take the vision in our minds and forge it into reality with our hands. The hand itself is a marvel of evolutionary engineering, a delicate arrangement of bone, tendon, and nerve, capable of both a crushing grip and the infinitesimally precise manipulation of a splinter. But without the guidance of a curious, problem-solving, and impossibly creative brain, it would be just another appendage. The tool is nothing without the idea that conceived it. So, where does the superpower truly reside? Is it in the intelligence that designs the spear, or in the hand that has the dexterity to craft and throw it? Are we the masters of the world because we think, or because we can make our thoughts real? This intricate dance between the abstract and the physical, between the mind's eye and the hand's work, may be the first layer of the truth. But if this is the source of our power, what does it mean that this same creative force can build a cradle just as easily as it can forge a club? While the cheetah relies on explosive speed and the crocodile masters the art of the ambush, what of the human? We possess neither fang nor claw, no armored hide, no venomous bite. Our initial strategy in the ancient wilds seems almost laughable. We run and we wait. This is not the sprint of a predator closing a short, violent gap. It is a different kind of pursuit altogether, a testament to a hidden, profound strength written into the very fiber of our being. Our body is a machine engineered for endurance. Beneath a sun that forces other creatures into the shade, we persist. Our secret weapon is not in our jaws, but in our skin. Millions of tiny pores that release a stream of water and salt. As sweat evaporates, it cools the engine within, allowing us to regulate our temperature under a relentless sky. Our frame, with its long legs and elongated torso, is built for the efficient, rhythmic consumption of distance. Each stride is a pendulum of conservation, a biomechanical marvel that turns the entire world into a track upon which we are the only species designed to run a marathon. We are the only ape built not for the branch, but for the ground, and for covering it in a steady, unstoppable flow. This was not a theoretical advantage. The archaeological record whispers of a practice known as persistence hunting. Imagine a small band of ancestors on the African savanna, sighting a kudu or an antelope. The hunt begins not with a leap, but with a step. They would begin to trot. The animal, built for sudden, panicked bursts of speed, would sprint away and stop to rest, its heavy panting struggling to cool its core. The humans would simply arrive, still trotting, and the animal would be forced to run again and again. Over miles, under the oppressive heat, this dance of death continued. The animal's flight response, a brilliant adaptation for escaping claws, becomes its fatal flaw against an opponent who does not seek to outsprint, but to outlast. The final act was not a dramatic pounce, but a quiet approach to a creature slumped in hyperthermic exhaustion, a stone tool delivering a merciful end from a safe distance. Our first true weapon was not a club, but patience itself. That ancient instinct echoes powerfully in our modern world. The marathon is not merely a sport. It is a global ritual, a symbolic return to our deepest roots. Thousands of people voluntarily subject themselves to this primal test of endurance, chasing a finish line that represents something far older than a medal. And our reliance on tools, that extension of our will beyond our frail bodies, remains our defining trait. The sharpened stone has evolved into the smartphone, the cooking fire into the microwave oven, the thrown spear into the intercontinental missile. We still solve our problems not with tooth and nail, but with crafted intelligence, turning our weakness into our greatest strength. The kitchen is our butchering site, technology our prosthetic claw, and strategy our invisible fang. Yet this answer feels incomplete, doesn't it? It is a compelling narrative of sweat and persistence, of clever hands and patient minds. But if endurance and tool use were the sole ingredients for planetary dominance, why did they not crown another species? The wolf pack runs with relentless efficiency and coordinated strategy. The chimpanzee wields tools with crude but effective skill. Countless other creatures possess the very physical armaments we lack. They are true predators, honed by evolution into perfect killing machines. Why did they not build civilizations, or gaze at the stars, or run for the sheer joy of it? Our running and our tools feel like symptoms of a deeper condition, not the cause of our success. Perhaps the true key lies not in what we gained, but in the staggering price we had to pay for it. What if our greatest adaptation was also our most vulnerable trait? An evolutionary gamble of such immense risk that it forced us into becoming the creatures we are today? What is the hidden cost of the human mind, and how did a fundamental weakness at the very beginning of life forge the crucible for our ultimate strength? A human infant is perhaps the most helpless creature in all of nature. It cannot walk, it can barely grasp, and its survival is a fragile thing, entirely dependent on the care of others. It lies there, a small bundle of unmet needs, while the offspring of other animals scramble to their feet within hours. One might look upon this design and see a catastrophic evolutionary flaw. Why would nature, in all its ruthless efficiency, choose such a seemingly terrible blueprint for its most celebrated creation? The answer is written in the silent, monumental conflict between two fundamental human traits: our immense brains and our ability to walk upright. The human brain is our crown jewel, a universe of neurons and synapses that allows us to paint the Sistine Chapel and calculate the orbit of Pluto. But this magnificent organ comes with a steep architectural price. To accommodate our sprawling cognition, the human cranium is large, far larger relative to our body size than that of any other primate. Meanwhile, the doorway into the world, the human pelvis, grew narrower as our ancestors stood up on two legs, a change that optimized the body for endurance running and striding across savannas. These two evolutionary paths, one soaring towards intellect and the other grounded in mobility, collided at the moment of birth. The result is what biologists call the obstetrical dilemma. The baby's head is almost too big for the passage it must travel. And so, evolution devised a brutal, clever compromise. Eviction. Human infants are born neurologically unfinished, their brains only about a quarter of their eventual adult size. They are, in a very real sense, still fetuses, ejected from the womb early out of sheer physical necessity. They arrive not as completed works, but as sketches, their potential vast, but their present form utterly vulnerable. This is not a design flaw, but a trade-off. We trade gestation in the womb for gestation in the world, a longer period of external development where the brain, now unconstrained by the mother's pelvis, can explode in growth, soaking up language, culture, and connection. Was this premature exile a calculated risk, the price we pay for a mind that can dream? The fossil record whispers the ancient story of this struggle. Compared to our robust cousins, the Neanderthals, Homo sapiens developed a narrower birth canal, making our passage into the world even more precarious. This physical constraint did not lead to our extinction. Instead, it forged our greatest strength. Such a vulnerable newborn demanded a new kind of care, a profound and extended investment. It required not just a mother, but a network, a father, grandparents, aunts, the entire tribe. The helpless infant, then, became the primal architect of human society. Its needs spark the first divisions of labor, the first inklings of communication that would complexify into language, the first bonds of empathy that would form the bedrock of community and culture. Our weakness, it seems, compelled us to invent strength in togetherness. Does our profound social nature, our capacity for love and sacrifice, stem from this original state of helpless dependence? This ancient biological drama is not a relic of the past. It plays out in stark relief in the modern delivery room. Despite all our medical advancements, human childbirth remains a potentially dangerous, intensely painful ordeal, a biological paradox in a world where we can mitigate almost any other kind of suffering. We call it the obstetric paradox, because the very same traits that make it so difficult, the large head and the narrow passage, are the signatures of our humanity. Yet within this crisis, a profound alchemy occurs. The searing pain of labor, the exhaustion, the vulnerability, these are not merely physiological events. They are the crucible in which the deepest of human bonds is forged. The mother's immense effort becomes the foundation of a fierce, protective love. This initial sacrifice becomes the model for all nurture, the first and most powerful lesson in what it means to care for another. Could it be that the pain is not a bug in the system, but a feature, a necessary fire that tempers the first link in the chain of human connection? So is this initial weakness a fatal flaw? Or is this prolonged state of dependency, this need for others, the very wellspring from which all human connection flows? We emerged into the world not as self-sufficient predators, but as beings who needed a cradle, not a club. Our biological inadequacy forced us to build communities, to develop empathy, to talk, to teach, and to love. It forced us to become more than just individuals, but to build a society, to truly live for and with others, requires a capacity to endure something profound. It requires us to move through pain and find meaning on the other side. What if the very event that begins this journey of dependence, birth itself, holds the key to understanding why we can bear such pain at all? Of all the creatures on this vast and varied planet, the human animal is the only one that screams. Not a cry of surprise, not a call of distress, but a full-throated, guttural roar that seems to tear from the very soul. In the wild, silence is the rule of birth. A doe finds a secluded thicket and with little more than a heavy breath brings new life into the world. A lioness retreats from her pride, her labor a private, quiet struggle. But for human women, birth is a vocal, communal, and profoundly painful event. This singular experience forces a question that echoes through the corridors of our evolution. If natural selection favors efficiency and survival, why has it left us with a process so seemingly brutal, so fraught with danger and agony? Why has evolution not smoothed this path, making it gentle, making it quiet? The answer, like so many in our story, is written in the awkward, brilliant compromise of our bodies. It begins with a simple, physical truth. We walk upright, and we have enormous brains. These two defining features are in a constant, silent war within the skeleton of every woman. The pelvis, reshaped for bipedal efficiency, became a narrower, tighter gateway. Meanwhile, the infant's head, housing that magnificent and hungry brain, grew ever larger. The result is an obstetrical dilemma, a biological tightrope walk. The baby must navigate a complex, twisting passage, a journey that is less a gentle slide and more a precise, arduous negotiation of bone and flesh. This is not a design flaw in the simple sense. It is a trade-off. The pain is the byproduct of our greatest achievements, our intelligence and our stride. It is the price tag on being human. But the story does not end with mere mechanics. The body, in its ancient wisdom, has woven a purpose into this pain. The intense, rhythmic contractions of labor do more than just push a child into the world. They trigger a flood of hormones, a chemical symphony designed for survival. Oxytocin, the molecule of love and bonding, surges not in spite of the pain, but perhaps because of it. This hormonal cascade does two things. It's powerful enough to make a mother forget the precise sharpness of the agony, replacing it with a hazy, focused love, and it ensures the uterus continues its work, staunching the flow of blood after the ordeal is done. The pain is a stark biological alarm, a system that demands attention and, in doing so, initiates the deepest emotional and physical connection we know. Is it possible that the very intensity of the experience is what forges the unbreakable bond between mother and child? This vulnerability, this necessary cry for help, did not go unanswered. We did not face this trial alone. The fossil record, usually a story of bone and stone, offers a tender glimpse into our deep past. The remains of our ancient ancestors show something remarkable. Even Neanderthal women, with their similar obstetrical challenges, lived long past their childbearing years. This suggests they were cared for, their wisdom valued. More poignantly, the study of ancient pelvic bones reveals patterns of wear and tear that hint at a long history of support during childbirth. For hundreds of thousands of years, it was not a single woman in a room, but a circle of women in a cave, a hut, a village. They would have gathered, offering hands to squeeze, water to drink, and low, steady murmurs of encouragement. The pain, instead of isolating, became a catalyst for community. It was the first classroom where knowledge of life and death was passed down. It was the original support group, binding individuals together with the shared, visceral understanding of this primal struggle. Did this collective response to our solitary pain become the very bedrock of human society? In our modern world, we have medicalized birth, moving it from the home to the hospital, from the circle of women to the sterile glow of fluorescent lights. Yet, we still instinctively recreate that ancient circle. The partner whose hand is crushed, the doula offering a cool cloth, the mother waiting anxiously in the hallway. These are all modern iterations of that primal support system. The language of birth, the stories we tell of long labors and narrow escapes, form a fundamental part of our cultural fabric. We share these narratives not as mere anecdotes, but as myths of origin, each one a tiny epic of pain, courage, and love. The shared experience of this vulnerability is a powerful social glue. In allowing ourselves to be weak, to need each other so completely, did we discover our greatest collective strength? Yet, a paradox remains, a quiet doubt that lingers after the story is told. If this pain is so necessary, so woven into the fabric of our bonding and our communities, why are we the only species that requires it on such a scale? The quiet birth of the gazelle produces a calf that can run within hours, a bond that is silent but no less strong. Our design seems almost clumsy in comparison. Are we perhaps a biological mistake? A creature of magnificent, ill-fitting parts, forever struggling through a process that for the rest of the animal kingdom is simply a part of life? Perhaps that is the wrong way to see it. Perhaps we are not an error, but an experiment. Evolution is not an engineer seeking perfect, efficient design. It is a tinkerer, working with what is at hand. It prized our brains and our upright gait, and the painful, dangerous birth was the cost. But in doing so, it accidentally gave us something else. It forced us to need each other. It forged empathy in the fire of another's suffering. It compelled us to develop knowledge, to share it, to become a species that cares, that anticipates, and that heals. The pain of birth is not just a challenge to be endured. It is the first lesson in being human, a lesson in vulnerability, compassion, and resilience. It is the crack in our design that let the light in. And if our greatest weakness, this fragile, painful entry into the world, is also the source of our profound connection to one another, what other hidden strengths lie buried within our apparent flaws? What miracles of repair does this fragile body contain, waiting for the moment it is called upon to rise once again from the brink? Imagine the scene. A chill, damp morning in a valley tens of thousands of years ago. A man, perhaps a hunter, a father, a storyteller, lies broken at the base of a cliff. The sharp, unmistakable agony of a shattered femur screams through his nervous system. There is no hospital, no ambulance, no morphine. There is only the cold ground, the creeping dread of predators drawn by the scent of blood, and the crushing weight of a simple, brutal truth. Such an injury is a death sentence. He will bleed out. He will starve. He will be found. And yet, we know his story did not end there. Archaeologists have held his bones. They have traced the jagged line of that fracture, not as a final chapter, but as a middle passage. The bone knitted itself back together. This man lived for years after his body was meant to fail. He was carried, cared for, healed. His survival whispers to us across the millennia, asking a question that is both biological and deeply philosophical. What is this strange, stubborn force within us that insists on going on? This force is not magic, though its results can feel miraculous. It is a symphony of biological processes, an ancient and intricate dance of repair written into our very DNA. The moment the skin breaks, the bone snaps, the world invades, a silent alarm is tripped. Platelets, those tiny, disc-shaped first responders, rush to the site, sacrificing themselves to form a fragile plug, a dam against the river of life leaking out. This is the initial, desperate act of containment. Then comes inflammation, a word we now fear, a state we medicate against. But in its pure, intended form, inflammation is the body's declaration of war. Blood vessels dilate, turning the area into a swollen, red, and heated superhighway for the legions of the immune system. White blood cells march in, these voracious packmen of the body, engulfing invaders and clearing the rubble of damaged cells. It is a controlled burn, a necessary destruction to enable creation. And then, the true rebuilding begins. Fibroblasts weave a scaffolding of collagen across the wound, a provisional matrix like the steel girders of a new building. Osteoblasts, the master masons of the skeletal system, lay down new bone, slowly, patiently, transforming the chaotic fracture site into a reinforced living weld that will often end up stronger than the original. Nerves once severed send out tentative new shoots, like explorers mapping a forgotten continent, slowly reestablishing the connection between mind and muscle, between intention and action. This entire orchestra is conducted by our genes, an evolutionary inheritance shared by almost all complex life, a toolkit for mending a world that is constantly trying to break us. We are, each of us, walking testament to a history of repairs. Our bodies are not pristine temples. They are living archives of scars, each one a fossilized memory of a battle won against entropy. The archaeological record is the library where these stories are stored, written not in ink, but in calcium and trauma. We find skulls from prehistoric Peru, trepanned with crude stone tools, the bone around the horrific hole showing clear signs of healing. Someone dared to drill into the very seat of consciousness, and the patient lived. We see the tibia of a Neolithic farmer, fractured and set, the two halves fused at an awkward angle. A lifetime of limping, but a lifetime nonetheless. We uncover the skeletons of warriors from forgotten battlefields, with the telltale notches of healed sword strikes on their ribs and clavicles. These are not just bones. They are narratives of resilience. They are proof that long before antibiotics and sterile surgery, the human story was already rich with compassion, with empathy, with the social bonds that make survival possible. That hunter with the broken femur did not heal himself. His survival is a testament to his community, to those who dragged him to safety, who fed him, who protected him during his long and painful convalescence. Our biology provides the mechanism, but it is our humanity that often provides the opportunity for that mechanism to work. This dance between internal fortitude and external support finds its modern expression in the most extreme cases of survival. A soldier steps on an IED and loses both legs. A firefighter suffers third-degree burns over 70% of her body. A car accident severs a spinal cord. Modern medicine does not replace the body's innate resilience. It partners with it. It stabilizes the patient so the body's ancient healing processes can begin their work. It fights infections that would otherwise overwhelm the immune system. It provides prosthetic limbs that become, through the incredible plasticity of the brain, a new part of the bodily map. We see individuals not just recovering, but adapting, evolving within a single lifetime. They learn to walk again on carbon fiber, to grasp with robotic hands, to redefine their entire sense of self around a new physical reality. Their triumph is a fusion of cutting-edge technology and the most primordial will to heal that is coded into our cells. It is a story of two kinds of resilience, one born in the test tube, the other born in the primeval mud, working in concert. Yet this celebration of recovery begs a darker, more nuanced question. When we speak of healing, what do we truly mean? Is the body's work a return to a previous state, or is it merely a negotiation with damage? A scar, after all, is not true skin. It is a patch, a functional but flawed replacement, lacking hair follicles and sweat glands. A fused bone may bear weight, but it often does so with a permanent stiffness, a reminder of the break with every change in the weather. The nervous system can reroute itself, but sometimes the rewiring goes awry, creating phantom pains, the sensation of an itch on a leg that is no longer there. The inflammation that saves us can, if left unchecked, turn inward, attacking our own tissues in a civil war that manifests as autoimmune disease. So, did that Neolithic hunter truly heal? Or did he simply achieve a new, painful, and altered equilibrium? His body found a way to survive, but it was likely a life punctuated by ache, a constant, low-level conversation with the trauma he had endured. His resilience came at a cost. Is this the hidden price of survival? Not a return to innocence, but a lifelong adaptation to a wound? The body, in its stubborn wisdom, can seal a cut, mend a break, and even to a degree, rewire a brain. It can build a bridge over the chasms that trauma creates. But the most profound wounds are not always the ones we can see. The deepest scars are often etched not in flesh, but in memory, in expectation, in the silent architecture of the self. The body remembers how to heal a bone. But what mends a broken spirit? What is the mechanism for a mind that has witnessed too much? The physical repair is a marvel, a testament to our evolutionary heritage. Yet, it leaves the more elusive question hanging in the air, a question that pulls our gaze inward, from the visible shell to the invisible, unimaginable world within. For if our bodies are this resilient, what astonishing, terrifying, and sublime capacity must reside in the very organ that contemplates its own healing, the mind that can imagine the cliff, the fall, and the possibility of a life after it. A 3-year-old child points a chubby finger at a cloud and weaves a tale of a flying dragon that breathes rainbows. They describe its shimmering scales, the sound of its wings, its fondness for stolen cookies. This creature has never existed. No one has ever seen it. Yet, in the mind of that child, it is as real as the ground beneath their feet. What other species on this planet can do that? A chimpanzee might use a stick to fish for termites. A crow might bend a wire to hook a treat. Acts of brilliant, practical intelligence. But could they ever invent, and truly believe in, a creature spun entirely from the ether of thought? This is not merely intelligence. This is something else entirely. This is the birth of a universe within a mind. This is imagination. The biological stage for this miracle is the human brain, particularly the sprawling, intricate neural landscape of the prefrontal cortex. While other animals are masters of the now, reacting to the world with a sophisticated and hardwired immediacy, this part of our brain is a dedicated time machine and a reality simulator. It allows us to drag the past into the present to learn from it, and more importantly, to project the future onto a blank canvas of possibilities. It is the seat of counterfactual thinking, the what if. Neurons fire not just in response to a predator's growl, but to the idea of a predator, to the plan for a trap to catch it, to the story we will tell about the hunt later. This neural architecture isn't just about more processing power. It's a different kind of processor altogether. It runs simulations. It constructs narratives. It builds worlds out of pure electrical and chemical potential. We are born with a biological engine for fantasy. But what is the purpose of a machine that can so easily detach from the tangible world? The answer is etched onto the walls of time itself. Long before written language, before cities, before the wheel, our ancestors entered the deep, silent darkness of a cave like Lascaux. By the flickering light of a grease lamp, they did not simply draw what they saw. They painted what they knew and what they feared and what they dreamed. The magnificent, charging bulls and trotting horses are not just portraits of prey. They are symbols of strength, of fertility, of the spirit of the animal. They are a prayer made visible, a story frozen in mineral and time. This impulse, to represent the internal world externally, is the fingerprint of imagination. We see it in the half-lion, half-human Sphinx of Giza, a creature that could never be, yet one that embodied divine power and riddles. We hear it in the Epic of Gilgamesh, a tale of friendship, mortality, and the search for meaning, told and retold for millennia. We witness it in the careful burial of a loved one, placed in the earth with tools, ornaments, and ochre dust, a profound, silent testament to a belief in something more, a story the living told themselves about. Death to make the unbearable loss meaningful. Our ancestors did not just live in the world, they narrated it, populated it with gods and spirits, and explained its mysteries through myths. Was this the first science, the first philosophy, the application of a storytelling brain to a universe of unknowns? This collective imagination, this ability to believe in a common fiction, did not remain in the caves. It became the very bedrock of civilization itself. Look around the modern world. What is money? It is not the paper or the metal coin. It is a shared hallucination, a collective agreement that this particular piece of paper represents value. We all believe in the story, so the story becomes real. A nation is not a mountain range or a river. It is a story about shared identity, history, and destiny. The law is not a physical force of nature. It is a collectively imagined idea of justice and order, and we agree to be bound by its narrative. Every company, every institution, every religion is fundamentally a story that enough people believe in to give it tangible power. Our ability to cooperate in extremely large, flexible groups hinges on this unique cognitive trick. We are united, not by genes or mere familiarity, but by common myths. So, is human society itself the most complex work of fiction ever devised? Yet, for all its creative glory, this same faculty has a twin shadow, a darker echo. The engine that dreams of dragons can also conjure demons. The same prefrontal cortex that plans a harvest can also spiral into debilitating anxiety, simulating every possible catastrophe that might befall us. The mechanism that builds bonds of shared belief can also construct walls of paranoia and prejudice, convincing us of threats that do not exist. The storytelling that gave us compassion and empathy can also be weaponized to dehumanize others, to paint them as characters in a darker, more dangerous narrative. Our capacity to believe in things beyond the evidence birthed both science and superstition, medicine and magic, profound faith and violent fanaticism. The line between a visionary and a madman is often just the consensus of the crowd. If imagination is the source of our greatest triumphs, is it also the root of our most profound follies? So we see imagination not as a simple tool, but as a fundamental, paradoxical force in human existence. It is our cradle and our cage, our liberator and our jailer. It is the weapon that allowed us to conquer the planet, not with tooth and claw, but with idea and ideal. Yet the most crucial biological weapon in our ancestral arsenal, the one that truly allowed a fragile, hairless ape to survive on the sun-scorched savannas, was not this majestic capacity for abstract thought. It was something far more mundane, something humbler, almost laughably simple. What if the real secret to our dominance was not the ability to imagine water, but the relentless, dripping, physical ability to chase it down? The lion, in its golden majesty, pants heavily in the heat, its breath a desperate, visible rhythm against the savanna's shimmer. We, on the other hand, simply glisten. It seems a humble, almost laughable comparison. A king of beasts reduced to a frantic heaving, while a seemingly soft-skinned ape remains composed, its skin merely blooming with a film of salt and water. To sweat is to be human, a common, unglamorous fact of our biology. But to dismiss it as such is to overlook the profound truth. This was our first invisible weapon, the biological innovation that made Homo sapiens not just a survivor, but an unstoppable force of persistence in a world of raw, explosive power. This miracle unfolds not in grand gestures, but in a silent, intricate ballet beneath the skin. We are, quite literally, a walking evolutionary marvel of liquid cooling. While most mammals must resort to panting, a process that consumes energy and demands rhythmic breathing, we possess a vast network of eccrine sweat glands, millions of them, waiting like a dormant irrigation system. When our internal thermostat ticks upward, a command is issued. These tiny, coiled factories spring to life, drawing water and electrolytes from our blood, channeling them through ducts to the surface of our skin. Each droplet is a sacrifice, a tiny offering to the laws of physics. As it breaks its bond with the body and becomes vapor, it steals away a precise amount of heat energy, leaving the skin beneath cooler. This is thermoregulation through evaporation, a continuous, quiet release that allows our engine to run hot without melting down. It is a system of such elegant efficiency that it permits us to sustain effort under a blazing sun long after other, stronger creatures have been forced to seek shade or succumb to exhaustion. Our strength, then, is not merely in muscle, but in this capacity to manage the inner fire. The archaeological record whispers tales of this very advantage, written not in stone tools alone, but in the dust of ancient, sun-scorched landscapes. Imagine the plains of prehistoric Africa, noon. The air wavers with the heat. A herd of antelope is restless, but not panicked. They are faster, far faster than the small band of hominins watching from a distance. A direct chase would be futile, a squandering of energy. So the hunt begins not with a sprint, but with a walk. The humans advance. The antelope, sensing the threat, bolt, a breathtaking explosion of speed that quickly puts distance between them. They slow, believing the danger has passed, but the humans do not stop. They maintain a steady, relentless trot, a pace that seems deceptively slow. Their bodies, cooled by the steady secretion of sweat, do not overheat. They follow, hour after hour. The antelope are forced to run again and again, their panting bodies unable to dissipate the heat generated by each frantic gallop. Their core temperature climbs, a deadly fever from within. Eventually, one stumbles, not from a wound, but from systemic collapse. The hunters, arriving calmly, have not won through superior strength or speed, but through a cruel, patient mastery of thermodynamics. This was persistence hunting, a form of conflict where the weapon was not a club, but a biological clock, and the victory was achieved without a single blow being exchanged. It was the application of a physiological quirk into a strategy of ultimate endurance. This ancient legacy is etched into the very fabric of our modern world, though we have long forgotten its original, stark purpose. We have ritualized it, transformed it into a pursuit of health, a test of will, a cultural symbol. The morning jogger, the weekend soccer player, the marathoner hitting the wall, each is engaging with this deep ancestral inheritance. We push our bodies to the point of sweat not from necessity, but from a desire to feel that primal machinery engage. We speak of sweating it out, imbuing the act with a sense of purification and effort. In our gyms and on our tracks, the glistening brow is a badge of honor, a visible testament to resilience and grit. We have built entire philosophies around this simple biological function, celebrating the sweat of one's brow as the mark of honest labor and determined spirit. It is a testament to how a fundamental evolutionary adaptation can be woven into the cultural and social identity of a species, becoming a metaphor for everything we value in ourselves: perseverance, dedication, and the quiet power of slow, consistent effort. Yet, a question lingers in the humid air. If the secret was merely sweat, why are we the only ones to have built civilizations upon its back? Other animals perspire. The horse, for instance, lathers in its own exertion. They can cool themselves, yet they did not become the planet's dominant persistence predator. The water cooling system is a masterpiece of engineering, but an engine is useless without the right fuel and a chassis built for the long road. What if our sweat was only the most visible part of a much deeper, more integrated system? What if the true key was not just the ability to cool the machine, but the nature of the machine itself? A machine designed not for explosive power, but for infinite patience? The answer, perhaps, does not lie on the surface of the skin, but buried deep within, in the very fabric of our being. It is found in the quiet, unassuming tissue that moves us, our muscles. We look at a gorilla, a creature of breathtaking power and dense, formidable strength, and we see a biology of immediate, overwhelming force. We possess no such obvious armor, no such terrifying physical declaration. Our muscles are less in sheer mass and bulk, but is less always weaker? Or could it be that our design traded the capacity for a single, shattering blow for something far more potent? The gift of endurance, of precise control, and of miraculous recovery. What if our bodies were never intended to win a fight, but to outlast every obstacle, to endure long after strength has faded? What is true strength, if not the power to continue? A chimpanzee, in a fleeting burst of raw power, can tear a limb from a tree with an ease that would shame the strongest human athlete. A gorilla, a mountain of serene muscle, could bend an iron bar as if it were a piece of licorice. We stand before them, comparatively slender, our frames lacking such explosive, terrifying strength. It presents a puzzle written in flesh and bone, in the brutal arena of survival, where power so often dictates the right to exist. How did we, the seemingly weaker ones, not just survive, but come to dominate? The answer is not found in the sheer volume of muscle, but in its exquisite design, a story of sacrifice and specialization written deep within our very fibers. Our strength is a quiet, patient kind. It is not the roar of a lion, but the steady, relentless flow of a river. Biologically, this is a tale of trade-offs. While the muscles of our primate cousins are packed with fast-twitch fibers primed for sudden, explosive bursts of power, a leap between branches, a swift, crushing blow, human muscle is woven with a different thread. We possess a significantly higher ratio of slow-twitch fibers. These are the endurance engines, rich with mitochondria and capillaries, designed not for a single, spectacular effort, but for sustained, efficient output. They fatigue slowly, allowing for prolonged activity with precise neurological control. This was the grand evolutionary bargain. We traded raw, blunt force power for dexterity and stamina. We gave up the club for the scalpel, the ability to smash for the ability to manipulate with breathtaking finesse. Our strength was never meant to overwhelm in an instant. It was built to outlast, to persist, to win not by knocking the opponent down in the first round, but by still being on our feet long after the stronger had gasped their last. This biological signature is etched not just in our cells, but across the entire canvas of our history. Go back and place your hand inside the outline left by a distant ancestor on a cave wall. The match is near perfect, but the story is in the subtle differences. The proportions, the alignment of the thumb. This is the hand of a precision grip, not a power grip. It is the hand that could hold a piece of flint, and with a series of calculated, minute adjustments, strike it to produce a razor-sharp edge, a tool of such refined lethality that it made brute force obsolete. It is the hand that could fasten a sharpened stone to a shaft with sinew, creating a spear that could bring down a mammoth from a distance. This was our true weapon. We did not meet strength with greater strength. We met it with ingenuity, with tools that were extensions of our finely controlled muscles. The hunt itself transformed from a test of power to a test of persistence. Early humans would not outsprint their prey. They would simply outthink and outendure it, using their relentless pace to push an animal into heat exhaustion, its explosive strength becoming its own fatal liability. Our survival was choreographed not by the jerky, powerful movements of a sprinter, but by the graceful, unstoppable rhythm of a marathon runner. And this legacy of endurance and control did not end with the taming of fire or the invention of the wheel. It simply found new expressions, weaving itself into the very fabric of modern human society. We still use this stamina to build, to labor, to carry. But look further, to the realms that are uniquely and profoundly human. We use these same muscles to dance, to tell entire stories without a single word. Every gesture a testament to exquisite motor control. We use them to write, the delicate muscles of the hand translating the nebulous world of thought into precise, permanent symbols on a page. We use them to play a musical instrument, where the slightest variation in pressure or timing can change a note from a sound into an emotion. A pianist's fingers flying across the keys, a surgeon's hand performing a life-giving procedure. These are the pinnacles of our muscular evolution. They are acts that require not just strength, but an unbelievable sustained precision that no other creature on earth can even approach. Our muscles became the instruments of our culture, the tools of our art, the conduits for our most abstract ideas to enter the physical world. So then, if our bodies are not temples of absolute power, what was it that allowed us to stand before the stronger and prevail? The answer seems to whisper from our bones, from our tools, from our art. It is a deeper, more formidable force. It is persistence, the stubborn, unyielding will to continue when every fiber screams to stop. It is a stamina not just of the body, but of the mind, a refusal to accept the initial verdict of weakness. And perhaps the purest, most visceral example of this ancient pact between body and will is found in an act so fundamental it feels ingrained in our soul, the act of running. Not the blinding sprint of the cheetah, but the steady, ground-eating lope that goes on for mile after mile after mile, a rhythm that speaks of a time when we hunted by endurance, chasing the horizon itself until our quarry fell. This relentless pursuit hints at a hidden superpower, one that turned the entire African savanna into a track meet where second place meant extinction. What does it mean to possess a body designed not for a fleeting moment of power, but for the long, patient, and ultimately victorious haul? You feel the burn in your lungs, the dull ache in your legs, the voice in your head begging you to stop after just a few kilometers on a run. Now, imagine running a full marathon, not on paved roads with cheering crowds and water stations, but across the sun-baked savanna, through dust and thorny brush, for hours on end. Your ancestors could do this. Not for a medal or a personal best time, but for a meal, for survival. This was not a sport. It was a fundamental expression of what it meant to be human. We often envision early humans as clever but physically weak creatures, surviving solely by their wits. The truth is far more profound. They were endurance athletes of the highest order, their bodies fine-tuned by evolution into the most efficient, long-distance running machine on the planet. Consider the architecture of the human form, a blueprint written in bone and sinew for the singular purpose of persistence. Our spines act as springs, curving and flexing to absorb the shock of each footfall, a suspension system that four-legged animals, with their rigid backs, simply lack. Our gluteus maximus, that powerful muscle that gives our shape its distinct curve, is a stabilizer engine, firing only when we run to keep our torso from pitching forward. It is virtually silent when we walk. Then there is the heel strike. In other animals, a large heel bone is for stability in walking. In us, it is a lever. Our Achilles tendon, long and elastic, stretches like a rubber band with each step, storing kinetic energy and then releasing it with a snap, propelling us forward with an efficiency that minimizes calorie burn. This is the genius of our design. We are built not for explosive speed, but for sustainable pursuit. Even our heads are engineered for the chase. A unique ligament, the nuchal ligament, acts like a bridle at the back of our skulls, tethering our head to our spine. It prevents our heavy, brain-filled cranium from bobbling violently with each stride, keeping our gaze locked steadily on the horizon, on the distant speck of prey that cannot afford to rest, and perhaps our most underrated adaptation blooms from our skin, sweat. While the antelope we pursued must pant to cool itself, a process that forces it to slow down, We possess millions of sweat glands. We are walking, running, cooling systems. We can shed heat while in motion, a continuous trickle of water that evaporates and keeps our core temperature from soaring into fatal heights. The animal must eventually stop in the shade, heaving, vulnerable. We simply keep coming. Is our entire biological narrative, then, written in the rhythm of a relentless stride? The fossil record and the practices of the last remaining hunter-gatherer societies offer a stunning window into this ancient marathon. Anthropologists have documented the practice of persistence hunting among the sand people of the Kalahari Desert. A hunter, or a small group, will identify a kudu or other large antelope. They do not attempt to outsprint it. Instead, they simply start to run after it. The animal sprints away, disappearing into the heat haze. The hunter, tracking at a steady, loping trot, follows. The animal is forced to run again and again. In the blistering midday sun, the chase continues for hours, across 20, 30, 40 kilometers. The kudu, built for powerful bursts of speed, has no evolved mechanism for sustained endurance. Its body overheats. It must stop. The human, dripping with sweat, heart pounding a steady rhythm, finally walks up to the exhausted, overheated animal that can run no more. The kill is not an act of overpowering strength, but of inevitable thermodynamics. It is a victory of biology and will. Our ancestors' daily lives were a testament to this endurance. Analysis of fossilized footprints shows they regularly walked and ran staggering distances. A single day's foraging or hunting could easily encompass a modern half-marathon, not as a singular event, but as a simple fact of life. Their world had no borders closer than the horizon, and their legs were their passport. Did this constant motion, this endless traversal of the earth, also shape the boundless nature of the human mind, always seeking the next horizon? In our modern world, we have enshrined this ancient capacity in ritual. The marathon is our cultural monument to this forgotten prowess. We run 42.2 kilometers to touch something primal within us, to remember a strength we no longer need for daily survival. We celebrate the legend of Pheidippides, the Greek messenger who ran from Marathon to Athens to announce a victory and then died of exhaustion. The story itself is a paradox, a celebration of ultimate endurance that ends in fatal collapse. Yet, we race in his name. Today, millions of people from all walks of life subject themselves to this grueling test. They are not the fastest creatures on the planet. They are simply the most stubborn. The finish line is not about beating others, but about connecting with a deep biological echo that whispers, "You are built for this. You are built to endure." In the collective ache of a city marathon, do we hear the ghost of a Kalahari hunt? But this narrative, while compelling, is not the whole truth. To say we were born to run is a romantic simplification. Evolution is not a designer with intent. It is a pragmatic editor. Perhaps we did not evolve to run for the joy of it, but because we had to. We were scavengers, opportunists, prey. Our bipedal gait first evolved for efficient walking, for carrying food and tools, for seeing over tall grasses. The runner's body was a glorious accident, a suite of adaptations that were co-opted for a new, desperate strategy. We ran because we lacked claws, because we lacked overwhelming strength, because we could not fly. Our endurance was not a triumphant destiny, but a brilliant workaround, a way to carve a niche in a world of bigger, faster, stronger competitors. Is our greatest strength, then, born not from power, but from a primordial vulnerability? So, we are left with a duality. We are the marathoners, the relentless pursuers, our bodies a testament to endurance carved by necessity. This epic run across millennia, however, was never just about the legs that carried us. It was enabled, dictated, and ultimately transcended by the tools we carried in our hands. The same journey that forged the runner also sculpted the hand, the instrument that would eventually craft the spear, the water vessel, the story, and break the finish line tape. The run made us physically, but what did we become because we could hold a tool while we ran? What world did we build because our hands were free? A hand can kill a deer, but it can also paint a star. That first, deliberate clenching of a fist, a gesture of power and potential, changed the history of our species. It was a quiet revolution in anatomy that would echo through millennia, a biological shift that whispered of futures, yet unimagined. In that simple act of opposition, of thumb meeting fingertip, we ceased to be merely creatures of the forest and began our long, slow walk toward the cosmos. The story of humanity is, in many ways, written in the lines of our palms, a map of our journey from prey to progenitor, told not in words, but in the silent, profound language of grasp and release. Consider the architecture of this most familiar instrument. It is a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering, a collection of 27 bones orchestrated by a complex web of muscles and tendons, all sheathed in a canvas of skin richer in nerve endings than almost any other part of the body. The true marvel, the spark of genius, is the opposable thumb. That single digit, sitting apart from the others, grants us a privilege rare in the animal kingdom, the power of precision. It transforms a mere appendage into a pincer, a cradle, a tool of infinite subtlety. We can apply brute force to split a log or exquisite gentleness to thread a needle. This is not just strength, it is control. It is the biological foundation for every symphony ever composed, every equation ever solved, every sculpture ever carved. Our intelligence found its physical voice in the delicate dance of bone and sinew, a silent partnership between the brain's command and the hand's flawless execution. This partnership first left its mark not on paper, but on stone. The earliest chapters of our technological saga are written in flint and obsidian. The Oldowan chopper, a crude but intentional shard of rock, fractured by one hand holding a hammerstone swung by another, was our first great leap. It was more than a tool for butchering. It was an idea made solid, an extension of the will into the physical world. With each successive generation, the hand refined its craft. It learned to haft a sharpened stone to a wooden shaft, creating a spear that extended our reach and averted our gaze from the eyes of predators. It learned to tie a sinew to a bow, to harness potential energy and release it as a lethal whisper. It learned to guide a needle made of bone, pulling thread through hide, stitching together not just clothing for warmth, but the very fabric of family and community. And on the walls of dark, sacred caves, the hand dipped in pigment and pressed against rock, leaving behind a stenciled signature. This was not a tool for survival, but for something more. It was a message. I was here. I saw this. I am. The first artist was not a painter, but a hand, and its medium was the world itself. The march of progress is, in reality, the story of the hand adapting to new forms of expression. The quill pen, the printing press, the steam valve. Each was a new instrument for the hand to master, a new dialect in the language of making. One might assume that in our digital age, the hand has been made obsolete, replaced by the click of a mouse or the tap on a glass screen. But look closer. The pianist's fingers flying across keys, the surgeon's controlled tremor guiding a robotic scalpel, the programmer's rapid-fire coding, these are not lesser acts. They are the same ancient dance, translated into a new lexicon. Our hands now sculpt in virtual clay, compose symphonies from silence, and connect us across continents with a swipe. They even speak in a language without sound. Sign language is a powerful reminder that the hand was never just a maker of things, it is a maker of meaning. It can build a house and it can build a poem. It can wield a weapon and it can convey a blessing. In every gesture, from a frantic wave to a comforting squeeze, the hand remains our primary instrument of connection, a direct line from one interior world to another. Yet this celebration of the hand as the architect of civilization leads us to a deeper, more unsettling precipice of thought. If the hand is the instrument, then what is the musician? If it is the tool, then what is the intelligence that guides it? The hand can create a stunning mural of color and life, but the same hand can detonate a bomb that obliterates it. It can offer a caress of profound love or deliver a blow of devastating hate. The hand possesses no inherent morality. It is a vessel of pure potential, awaiting a command. It executes with flawless precision, but it does not choose the target. It can build a sanctuary or a guillotine with equal skill. So we must ask, who or what is the true craftsman? The hand that holds the chisel, or the invisible force of intention that directs its strike? The hand's greatness, its capacity to paint stars instead of merely spilling blood, seems to require something more than just instruction. It needs a governor, a compass. It needs a feeling. To truly elevate the tool from an instrument of survival to one of civilization, a deeper, more vulnerable human emotion must enter the equation. A sensation that flickers across the face, heats the skin, and causes the eyes to drop. It is a feeling that seems to speak of weakness, but may in fact be the very bedrock of our humanity. For the hand to create, to connect, to build a world worth living in, it must first learn to feel shame. What is this fragile, burning signal that tells the hand to lower its weapon, that makes it hesitate before striking, that guides it not merely to take, but to give? A child stands frozen, one hand still in the cookie jar, their face a sudden, brilliant crimson. They turn away, shoulders hunching, as if to make their body smaller, to disappear. No one taught them this dance of avoidance, this hot, silent language of the cheeks. The reaction is too swift, too universal to be a learned script. It emerges from a deeper well, a primal part of us that understands without words the weight of a transgressed boundary. So, where does this peculiar, searing emotion, shame, truly come from? Is it a social curse, or could it be the very bedrock upon which we've built our humanity? The biology of shame is written in the body's most honest ink, blood. The blush is its most unmistakable signature, a vasodilation of facial capillaries that we alone, among all animals, seem to possess. It is an involuntary broadcast, a signal we cannot fake and cannot fully suppress. This physiological response is orchestrated by a delicate interplay between our ancient limbic system, the seat of raw emotion, and the modern, discerning prefrontal cortex, which acts as our social compass. Hormones like oxytocin, often dubbed the bonding molecule, are deeply involved. It doesn't just promote trust and affection, it sharpens our social awareness, making us exquisitely sensitive to our standing within the group. To be shamed is to feel a sudden chemical exile. The body's reaction, averted eyes, slumped posture, a desire to sink into the floor, is a non-verbal plea for reacceptance, a silent scream that says, "I see I have erred. See my distress and let me back in." It is a hardwired program for social survival, triggered long before conscious thought can intervene. What does it say about our species that our deepest social fears are painted on our faces for all to see? If the body knows shame instinctively, our history shows us how we've ritualized it, woven it into the very fabric of community. Long before written laws, there was the judgmental gaze of the tribe. Archaeological evidence whispers of this ancient social contract. The careful burial of the dead with grave goods suggests a fear of dishonoring the ancestors, a shame in providing inadequately for their journey. The development of clothing, beyond mere practicality, points to the emergence of modesty, a cultural skin of shame draped over our biological one. Body paint, tattoos, and scarification were not merely decoration. They were powerful markers of belonging, and to be without them was to be naked in a social sense, an outsider exposed to the shaming glare of the group. Purification rituals, from sweat lodges to ceremonial baths, speak to a profound desire to wash away not just physical dirt, but the metaphysical stain of wrongdoing, to return to a state of social cleanliness. Shame, it seems, was the invisible glue that held early human groups together, a more efficient tool for enforcing norms than any club or spear. It was the internalized policeman, ensuring cooperation and cohesion long before the concept of a formal law existed. Is civilization itself, then, built upon a foundation of managed humiliation? In our modern world, This ancient emotional machinery has been repurposed to navigate a far more complex social landscape. Shame has become the cornerstone of our moral intuition. It is the gut-wrenching feeling that follows a lie, a betrayal, a moment of cruelty, even when no one is watching. It is the punishment we administer to ourselves, a private court that convenes in the silence of our own minds. This self-regulating mechanism is what allows vast anonymous societies to function with a degree of trust and order. It is the unwritten law that compels us to return a lost wallet, to help a stranger in distress, to choose honesty when deception would be easier and undetected. Shame is the emotional residue of our empathy, the proof that we have internalized the feelings of others and care what they would feel if they knew our transgression. It is the quiet, persistent voice that reminds us we are social creatures, that our actions ripple outward, and that our worth is somehow tied to the perceptions of the collective. But if this internal compass is so vital, what happens when its needle spins wildly, pointing not toward genuine moral failure, but toward the arbitrary dictates of a fractured culture? Yet, for all its social utility, shame carries a dangerous, dual nature. It can be a catalyst for growth, a painful but necessary acknowledgement of harm. But it can also be a weapon, a tool for oppression, and a mask for weakness. To never feel shame is to be a sociopath, adrift from the human community. But to be chronically shackled by it is to live in a prison of someone else's design. Societies can pathologize natural human functions, branding them with shame to control and subjugate. They can use shame to enforce conformity, to stifle innovation, and to silence dissent. It can become a cultural blind spot, where the fear of being shamed prevents us from asking critical questions or challenging unjust norms. The very emotion designed to bind a group together can be twisted to isolate and break individuals. It can be internalized to such a degree that it becomes a perpetual state of being, a lens through which one views their entire self as fundamentally flawed rather than a specific action as misguided. Can a feeling so crucial to our collective survival also be the primary agent of our individual suffering? So here we stand, with this paradoxical emotion. Shame is the cradle of our morality, the internal guardian that allows us to live together. But for that guardian to be wise and just, it cannot operate in a vacuum. It requires a constant, intricate feed of information. It needs to understand not just the rules, but the why behind them. It needs to feel the consequences of our actions on others. This suggests that shame's silent partner, the faculty that gives it its true moral power, is something even more remarkable. The profound, almost magical human ability to feel not just our own emotions, but to sense, interpret, and internalize the emotional states of others. We possess a kind of supersense, a way of seeing the invisible world of feeling that animates those around us. From a subtle shift in the eyes to a slight tension in the voice, we are constant, intuitive readers of a story we did not write. This capacity to step outside the confines of our own skin and into the lived experience of another is perhaps our greatest evolutionary achievement. It is the bridge between the self and the other, the necessary precursor to any true sense of ethics. For if shame is the moral reaction, then this ability is the moral perception. But how does this bridge actually work? What is the mechanism that allows one mind to touch another, not with hands, but with feeling? Have you ever found yourself wiping away a tear during a film, your throat tight with a sorrow that isn't your own? Or felt a genuine pang of sadness for a friend's misfortune, a heaviness that seems to settle in your own chest? We often dismiss these moments as sentimentality, a sign of being overly soft. But what if this capacity is not a weakness at all, but one of our species' most profound evolutionary triumphs? This ability to feel with another, to step into the emotional current of someone else's life, is a silent, ancient language written deep within our biology. It is the invisible thread that connects individual consciousness, weaving solitary experiences into a shared tapestry of feeling. This is not mere emotion. This is empathy. The architecture of this connection is etched into the very fabric of our brains. Scattered through key regions like the premotor cortex and the inferior parietal lobule, exists a remarkable network of cells known as mirror neurons. Think of them not as simple cells, but as a neural echo chamber. When you see someone reach for a cup of coffee, a specific set of neurons in your motor cortex fire, planning your own movement. Astonishingly, that same set of neurons will also fire, albeit more quietly, simply by watching another person perform the very same action. This mirroring goes beyond mere motion. It extends into the realm of feeling. Witness a friend wince as they stub their toe, and the neural pathways associated with your own experience of pain will flicker to life. See a stranger's face break into a radiant, uncontrollable smile, and the corners of your own mouth may twitch in response, a subtle, unconscious echo of their joy. These neurons are the biological stage upon which the drama of another's experience is privately performed, allowing us to simulate, to understand, and ultimately to resonate with the inner world of others. They are the hardware for a shared emotional reality. But if this network is the instrument, then what is the music it was built to play? Is this internal mirror simply a passive reflector, or does it yearn for a chorus? The answer lies not in our modern world, but buried in the dust of our deepest past. Long before philosophy or psychology put a name to it, empathy was being practiced in the silent, shadowy corners of prehistory. Consider the Shanidar Cave in Iraq, where a Neanderthal man was laid to rest over 50,000 years ago. His skeleton, painstakingly uncovered by archaeologists, tells a story not of a swift end but of a long life marked by severe disability, a crippled arm, a blinded eye, and other debilitating injuries. His survival into adulthood was an impossibility without help. He could not hunt or defend himself. His existence was a direct result of care, of food shared, of protection offered by others in his group who recognized his suffering and acted to alleviate it. Similarly, graves from early Homo sapiens sites often contain bodies buried, with flowers, tools, and ochre, suggesting a ritualistic send-off, a collective acknowledgement of loss that transcends the individual. This care for the infirm and the ritualized mourning of the dead are profound archaeological testaments to empathy in action. They are the fossilized footprints of a heart that could look beyond its own survival to tend to the survival of another. This was not a calculated strategy. It was the emergence of a new kind of bond, one that would eventually become the bedrock of everything we build together. What does this ancient, silent compassion tell us about the true currency of human survival? This primordial impulse did not fade. It became the cornerstone of our civilization. Every institution that defines a humane society finds its roots in this capacity to feel for another. Modern healthcare is, at its core, institutionalized empathy, a system built on the fundamental desire to heal another's pain. Education is the empathetic transmission of knowledge and understanding from one mind to another. Our entire concept of justice, however flawed, is an attempt to create a system that understands the impact of actions on the well-being of others. Art, in all its forms, is perhaps the purest expression of this phenomenon. A novelist makes us feel the loneliness of a character we will never meet. A photographer's image of a conflict zone can stir a global conscience. A simple, well-told story about a single person's struggle can ignite social movements and rewrite government policies. It bypasses logic and debate, speaking directly to our shared neural network, making another's reality our own, if only for a moment. In this light, empathy is the most potent tool for connection we possess. But what happens when this deepest of human connectors is severed from its moral compass? For all its beauty, this powerful tool possesses a sharp, double edge. The same neural machinery that allows us to feel compassion can be hijacked and manipulated. Advertisers expertly tap into our mirroring systems, linking their products to images of happiness, belonging, and success, selling us an emotional fantasy rather than a tangible good. Political propagandists don't argue with facts. They wield stories designed to provoke fear of the other or righteous anger on behalf of the group, short-circuiting our critical thinking with a targeted emotional charge. The most dangerous demagogues in history were not great logicians. They were masterful empathists, skilled at sensing and amplifying the fears and frustrations of the masses, then directing that collective emotion toward a scapegoat. This reveals an unsettling paradox. The very system that bonds us to our kin can also be tuned to exclude or even hate the stranger. If our empathy can be so easily narrowcast, directed, and weaponized, are we truly in control of this profound ability, or are we merely puppets to the most compelling emotional narrative we encounter? To feel the pain of another is the bedrock of our humanity, the glue of our societies, and the source of our greatest art and altruism. It is what pulls a hand back from a flame it never touched, and what sends aid to a disaster on the other side of a planet we've never seen. Yet, this same exquisite sensitivity is also the reason we can be wounded by a harsh word in a fictional story, or carry a weight of anxiety for problems that are not our own to solve. We suffer from phantoms, from echoes of sorrows that originated in minds far from our own. We are blessed and cursed with a nervous system that refuses to be a solitary island, forever building bridges of feeling to the mainland of others' experiences. This leaves us in a perpetual state of vulnerability, forever open to the world's joy and its immense pain. So, if our waking consciousness is so permeable, so vulnerable to the echoes of others and the manipulations of crafted narratives, where do we go to be truly, utterly alone with ourselves? Perhaps we must descend into the silent, chaotic theater of the night, to the place where the brain speaks in its own private language of symbols and sensations. What, then, are we to make of the dreams that visit us there? Are they merely the mind's discarded refuse? Or could they be the most ancient rehearsal for being human? Why do we dream of being chased, of falling from a great height, or of showing up to a school reunion with no pants on? Is the brain merely babbling in its sleep, muttering nonsensical fragments of the day's events? Or is it, in the quiet dark of night, running a sophisticated training simulation for the soul? We spend a third of our lives asleep, and within that oblivion we spend hours in a world entirely of our own making. This realm of dreams feels so real, so visceral, that upon waking, the relief of its falsehood can be a physical sensation, a cool sweat on the brow. For centuries, these nightly narratives were seen as messages from the gods, as prophecies, or as the wanderings of an untethered spirit. The modern world, with its clinical light, often dismisses them as neural static, the random firing of a mind cleaning its house at the end of the day. But what if this dismissal is our own poverty of imagination? What if the dream is not the mind's junk drawer, but its most vital workshop? The stage for these dramas is a biological one, meticulously set each night. We descend into the rapid eye movement, REM phase of sleep, and the brain, far from powering down, erupts into a frenzy of activity. The visual cortex, the amygdala, the seat of emotion, and the deep memory centers of the hippocampus light up as if responding to a waking world. Yet the body is paralyzed, a prisoner in its own bed, a safety mechanism to prevent us from acting out the scenes unfolding behind our eyes. Here, in this locked-down laboratory, the mind gets to work. It sifts through the day's clutter, the emotional flotsam and jetsam, deciding what to keep and what to discard. It stitches new experiences into the old tapestry of memory, making sense of the world by weaving it into the story of ourselves. This is not a quiet filing process. It is a riotous, chaotic, and deeply creative act. The brain is not just storing facts. It is playing with them, breaking them apart and reassembling them into strange new shapes. It is running simulations. That feeling of free-falling, perhaps a primordial rehearsal for a loss of control, the dream of being pursued, an ancient drill for threat assessment, running through escape scenarios in a world where danger lurked behind every tree. In this way, the dream is a cradle, a safe space to practice being human without any real-world consequences. We can face our deepest fears in this virtual reality, and wake up having learned something, even if we cannot remember the lesson. This notion of the dream as a survival tool is etched deep into our history, long before the discovery of REM sleep. For countless hunter-gatherer societies, the dream was not a private hallucination, but a communal resource. It was a map, a hunting guide, a direct line to the wisdom of ancestors. A man might dream of a specific waterhole, or of the path a wounded buffalo would take, and the tribe would act on this intelligence. The dream was a vital piece of technology, as crucial as a sharpened spear. It was a way of processing collective anxiety, of rehearsing social dynamics, and of connecting to a world alive with meaning and spirit. The dream was not seen as separate from reality. It was a deeper layer of it, a shadow world that held truths the waking eye was too busy to see. This ancient perspective suggests that our modern tendency to dismiss dreams is a profound loss. We have traded a cosmic telephone for a neurological junk filter. We have gained a scientific explanation, but have we lost the wisdom? What crucial intelligence are we sleeping through each night? Indeed, the dream's resume is impressive. It claims credit for some of humanity's greatest creative and intellectual breakthroughs. The chemist Auguste Kekule envisioned the ring structure of benzene after dreaming of a snake biting its own tail. Mary Shelley's nightmare gave birth to Frankenstein. Einstein's theory of relativity was, in his own words, sparked by a dream of sledding at the speed of light. Salvador Dalí would nap with a key in his hand, hovering over a metal plate. As he fell asleep, the key would drop, the clang waking him to capture the surreal images from the threshold of dreams. In these liminal states, the rigid logic of the waking mind relaxes its grip. Unexpected connections are made. The impossible becomes plausible. The dream is the ultimate brainstorming session, where the internal critic is asleep and the wild, untamed imagination is put in charge. It solves problems we didn't know we had with solutions we would never consciously consider. So, if we are to view the brain as a computer, the dream is not its garbage disposal. It is its most powerful, unconventional processing algorithm. What incredible idea is taking form in your mind tonight, only to be forgotten by morning? Yet, for every benevolent, creative dream, there is its dark twin, the nightmare. This is the paradox that haunts any simple theory of dreams as purely beneficial. If the dream is a training ground, why does it so often become a torture chamber? Why force us to relive our deepest traumas, to face monsters we cannot defeat, to feel the pure, unadulterated terror of being hunted? Is this merely a system glitch, a misfiring of the amygdala that goes horribly right? Or is there a more terrifying purpose? Perhaps the nightmare is the most advanced form of training. It is the fire drill that uses real fire. By forcing us to confront the absolute worst-case scenario in a space where we cannot truly be harmed, the nightmare inoculates us. It teaches us what true fear feels like, and in doing so, perhaps it makes us just a little bit braver in the waking world. The nightmare does not ask for permission. It throws us into the deep end of our own psyche and forces us to swim. It is the club, not the cradle. It is the predator that keeps the prey sharp. Can we truly know our strength without first being broken down in the secret night? So we are left in the middle, suspended between two truths. The dream is both the babble and the prophecy. It is the neurological waste and the wellspring of survival. It is the safe playground and the dangerous testing ground. It is the beautiful, terrifying proof that our minds are not singular, orderly things, but ecosystems teeming with conflicting voices, ancient instincts, and future possibilities. We close our eyes each night and surrender to this internal universe. We become the audience, the actor, and the playwright in a story we will mostly forget. We spend a third of our lives switched off, dormant, vulnerable. Yet in that state of utter surrender, the body is not idle. It is repairing tissue, rebalancing chemistry, consolidating learning. The mind is not absent. It is journeying. It is conducting the silent, invisible work that holds the self together. If this is what happens when we are merely dreaming, what other profound unseen magic is being performed in the deeper layers of the night? What is the true price of a waking world that so carelessly undervalues the essential, life-giving act of simply turning out the lights? We spend nearly a third of our lives asleep. If you live to 90, that is 30 years of your existence spent in a state of profound unconsciousness. 30 years of lying in the dark, motionless, vulnerable. In a world that worships speed and productivity, this looks like an evolutionary flaw, a colossal waste of time. Why would nature, that ruthless and efficient engineer, design a system that requires us to shut down for such a staggering portion of our brief, precious lives? The answer, it turns out, is not that sleep is a flaw, but that we have profoundly misunderstood its purpose. It is not an empty void, a blank space on the calendar of our days. It is a hidden, bustling factory, a silent theater, a deep-sea dive into the self. It is our most underestimated superpower. On the surface, sleep appears to be a state of pure absence. The lights are off. The world is shut out. But beneath the still surface of a sleeping body, a frenzy of activity is underway. This is where the first layer of truth reveals itself, in the cold, hard language of biology. While the conscious mind is away, the janitorial staff of the body clocks in for the night shift. Cells that were worn down by the day's labors are repaired. Muscles are rebuilt. A symphony of hormones is conducted, releasing growth hormone to mend tissues and leptin to regulate the hunger that gnaws at us when we are awake and depleted. The most miraculous cleaning, however, happens within the silent, dark cavern of the skull. The brain, that ravenous consumer of energy, generates its own unique kind of waste, toxic proteins like beta-amyloid, which, when left to accumulate, are implicated in the ravages of Alzheimer's disease. How does the brain, locked in its bony prison, take out its own trash? It employs a system both elegant and hidden, the glymphatic system. As we sink into deep sleep, our glial cells shrink by nearly 60%, widening the channels between neurons. Then, a slow, gentle wave of cerebrospinal fluid washes through the expanded space, flushing the metabolic detritus of the day into the circulatory system for disposal. It is a nightly power cleanse, a deep detox that is impossible to achieve while awake. We are literally clearing our minds. To forego sleep is to let the garbage pile up, to allow the very architecture of our thoughts to become cluttered and poisoned. What does it mean that our sanity is maintained by a plumbing system that only operates in the dark? And the work is not merely janitorial, it is also archival. In the rapid eye movement, REM stage of sleep, the brain becomes a master editor, tirelessly sorting through the raw, chaotic footage of the day. It decides what to keep and what to discard, weaving important events and skills into the neural tapestry of long-term memory. A student practicing a sonata, an athlete learning a new move, a programmer wrestling with a line of code. Their mastery is not achieved in the exhausting focus of the practice room, but in the quiet surrender that follows. The brain replays the day's events at high speed, strengthening the connections between neurons, making the skill more automatic, the memory more resilient. The conscious mind learns, but the sleeping mind truly knows. So, is forgetting actually a failure of memory, or is it the successful execution of a nightly directive to let go of the insignificant? This biological imperative is not a new discovery of modern science. It is an ancient rhythm, deeply woven into the fabric of our history. Before the artificial sun of the electric light bulb banished the night, human sleep followed a different cadence. Historical records, from court documents to diaries, suggest that our ancestors often practiced segmented sleep. They would descend into a first sleep shortly after dusk, then awaken in the still, silent heart of the night for an hour or two. This was not a time of anxiety or frustration. It was a watch of quiet contemplation. People would lie in bed and talk to their partners, pray, meditate, or interpret their dreams. Some would even visit neighbors. This was followed by a second sleep that carried them through to dawn. In this older rhythm, sleep was not just a biological state, but a social and psychological space. The wakeful interlude was a bridge between two worlds of dreams, a time when the inner life felt closer to the surface. It was in this liminal space that stories were shared, fears were confessed, and the imagination was given free rein. The night was not a barren stretch of time to be endured, but a territory rich with its own unique potential. The pressure to compress all our rest into one single efficient block has severed us from this dimension of our consciousness. In gaining 8 straight hours of oblivion, have we lost the quiet magic of the midnight watch? Our modern world, with its relentless pace and glowing screens, treats sleep not as a necessity, but as a negotiable commodity. It is the first thing we sacrifice on the altars of work, productivity, and social obligation. We wear our sleep deprivation like a badge of honor, a proof of our dedication. Yet the science is unequivocal and brutal in its judgment. Chronic sleep loss is a silent epidemic with a body count. It is a key contributor to depression and anxiety, weakening the brain's ability to regulate emotion. It sabotages the immune system, leaving us vulnerable to infections, and even making vaccines less effective. It disrupts the hormonal balance that controls appetite, directly fueling the engines of obesity and diabetes. It increases the risk of heart disease, stroke, and a host of cancers. The brain fog, the irritability, the lack of focus, these are not just minor inconveniences. They are the warning flares of a system beginning to break down from the inside. Conversely, the benefits of truly deep, sufficient sleep read like a catalog of superhuman abilities. It supercharges creativity, forging novel connections between seemingly unrelated ideas. It solidifies learning and sharpens problem-solving skills. It regulates our emotions, allowing us to face the day's challenges with resilience rather than reactivity. In the demanding theater of modern life, a good night's sleep is the ultimate performance-enhancing drug, one that is legal, free, and available to all. Yet we consistently refuse to take it. Why? If the evidence is so clear, if the rewards are so great, and the penalties so severe, why do we, both as individuals and as a society, remain in a state of active rebellion against this most fundamental of needs? The answer may lie not in biology, but in culture. We have chosen a different God to worship. We value the visible hustle over the invisible restoration. We prize the conscious, striving self, the self that builds, produces, and consumes, and we devalue the dormant self that merely repairs, restores, and dreams. To be asleep is to be unproductive in the most capitalist sense of the word. It is to be absent from the marketplace of both goods and attention. We have convinced ourselves that to be still is to be falling behind. But perhaps the resistance is even older. To surrender to sleep is to practice a small death. It is to relinquish control, to become vulnerable, to trust the world enough to leave it for a while. In a world that feels increasingly uncertain, is the fear of letting go the one thing keeping us awake? So we find ourselves at a paradox, holding two conflicting truths. Sleep is a non-negotiable biological mandate, the foundation upon which every aspect of our health and cognition is built, and yet, we, the only species with the knowledge of its immense value, are the only species that willfully and consistently deprives itself of it. We have traded this ancient individual superpower for another, one that is not about the self, but about the collective. We have chosen to extend our waking hours together, to collaborate, to build, to tell stories around artificial fires long after the sun has set. This ability to flexibly cooperate, to work in vast, imagined communities toward a common goal, is arguably humanity's greatest invention. It has built cities and nations, created art and science. But this magnificent collaboration requires time, and that time has been stolen from the night. What have we lost in that exchange, and can we ever truly have both? A pod of whales cannot build a submarine. A troop of chimpanzees cannot hold an election. But 1,000 human strangers can do these things with relative ease. They can erect cities, fund missions to Mars, and organize global networks of trade, all while remaining largely unknown to one another. The chasm between our species and all others is not merely one of intelligence or tool use, but of a peculiar and profound ability, flexible cooperation on a massive scale. This capability does not spring from a shared genetic lineage or the intimate bonds of a small family group. It is woven from something far more nebulous, yet infinitely more powerful, a shared belief in a common story. We are the only creatures on Earth that can be mobilized by a concept, a flag, a dollar bill, a promise of paradise, or the idea of a nation. These are not tangible objects with inherent power. They are fictions, yet we live and die for these fictions. They allow us to trust the baker to give us bread for a piece of printed paper, to follow the laws set by people we have never met, and to work towards a corporate vision that exists only in a collective imagination. This is the miracle of human society, built not on the solid ground of instinct, but on the ever-shifting sands of shared narrative. How did we, a species of anxious, self-interested apes, come to be bound together by such invisible threads? The architecture for this miracle is etched into the very folds of our brains. Neuroscientists have mapped regions like the temporoparietal junction that light up when we consider the beliefs and intentions of others. This is the seat of theory of mind, the ability to understand that someone else's knowledge and desires might be different from our own. It is the biological foundation for empathy. Alongside it, other neural circuits process group identity, collective morals, and shared emotions. A rush of oxytocin, the so-called bonding hormone, can enhance our feelings of trust and generosity towards those we perceive as part of our in-group. These are not cold, calculating processors. They are the emotional engines of tribalism and belonging. They allow us to feel a pang of pride when an athlete from our country wins a race, or a shared grief during a national tragedy. Our biology did not hardwire us for a specific task, like the ant's mandate to forage. Instead, it gifted us with a flexible toolkit for connection, allowing us to form bonds that are situational, conditional, and astonishingly broad. Could it be that our greatest evolutionary advantage was not a stronger arm or a sharper tooth, but a brain soft-wired for collective belief? The evidence of this collaborative spirit is buried in the dust of our past. Long before the first written word or the concept of currency, our ancestors were performing feats of breathtaking coordination. Consider the megaliths of Göbekli Tepe, carved and raised by hunter-gatherers over 11,000 years ago, or the sophisticated hunting strategies required to take down a mammoth, an endeavor that demanded precise roles, silent communication, and a shared goal that benefited the entire group. These were not the acts of a disorganized band. They speak of a society already experimenting with specialization, with some individuals perhaps crafting tools while others led the hunt or interpreted the spiritual world. This early division of labor was a social invention as pivotal as the discovery of fire. It meant that knowledge could deepen in specific areas, that skills could be refined across generations, and that the group's survival no longer rested on every individual performing the exact same task. The collective whole became far greater than the sum of its individual parts. What whispers of agreement, what shared visions passed between them as they hauled those immense stones into place, creating a monument to a belief we can only guess at. This nascent ability to collaborate around a shared purpose exploded into the complex tapestry of modern civilization. All the pillars of our world, religion, nation-states, corporations, and financial systems, are, as the historian Yuval Noah Harari calls them, intersubjective realities. They exist because we all agree to believe in them. A border is just a line on a map until millions agree to respect its authority. A dollar bill is just a piece of cotton until we all believe it can be exchanged for food or shelter. These are the ultimate tools of flexible cooperation, allowing millions of strangers to work in concert with a harmony that would be the envy of any hive. A university, a hospital, a stock market. Each is a monument to our ability to subscribe to a common set of rules and a common story about what is valuable and what is real. We have built our world on a foundation of collective fiction. Is this the pinnacle of human ingenuity or a magnificent and precarious illusion? Yet, if cooperation were the only metric, then we have already been surpassed. A hive of drones can coordinate with flawless efficiency. A network of servers can execute a complex task with perfect synchronicity. They cooperate, but they do not connect. They lack the messy, irrational, and profound humanity that infuses our collaborations. We do not just work together, we inspire each other, we comfort each other, we betray each other, and we forgive each other. Our collaborations are steeped in emotion, in rivalry, in loyalty, and in love. So, if the mechanism of cooperation is the hardware of our society, what is the software? What is the vital animating spark that transforms a mere system of exchange into a culture, a mere group into a community? If it is not just about achieving a goal, then what is it truly about? Perhaps the answer lies not in the what of cooperation, but in the how. Perhaps the key is the medium through which our shared fictions are most powerfully transmitted. It is a tool, so commonplace we forget its sorcery, an instrument we carry within us from our first breath to our last. It is more than a method for sharing information. It is a vehicle for sharing feeling. It can calm a crying child, incite a revolution, or express a love that defies all logic. It is the human voice, not just as a carrier of words, but as a musical instrument of incredible subtlety and power. A single spoken word can be a weapon or a caress, depending on the tone that carries it. It is through the voice that a dry economic policy becomes a stirring call to action, that a simple story becomes a foundational myth, that a melody becomes an anthem of unity. Could it be that the deepest magic of human collaboration flows not from a shared idea alone, but from the shared feeling conveyed by the voice that speaks it? And if that is so, what worlds are built on the breath of a single story, told just so? A 2-year-old child who has never formally studied the rules of grammar or the art of rhetoric can look you in the eye and declare, "I want that." It is a simple statement, yet it contains a universe of complexity. It is a want, a demand, a declaration of a separate self. How is this possible? How does a mere vibration of air, shaped by flesh and thought, become a vessel for desire, for love, for an entire reality? This miracle, this act of conjuring meaning from breath, is the birthright of our species, an instrument of unimaginable power nestled in the very core of our being. The biological machinery required for this feat is a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering. Deep within the throat, the larynx houses 2 delicate bands of tissue, the vocal cords. They are not so different from the reeds of a clarinet or the strings of a violin. With exquisite control, we tighten them, we loosen them, we push a torrent of air from our lungs past them, and they begin to sing. But this is only the beginning of the symphony. The raw sound then travels into the cathedral of the mouth, where it is sculpted into specificity by the agile dance of the tongue, the shaping of the lips, the soft rise and fall of the palate. Each consonant is a tiny percussive event, each vowel, an open space of resonance. This physical apparatus, this instrument of flesh and bone, is, however, merely the hardware. The true conductor resides in the shadowy theater of the skull. In the human brain, 2 regions in particular, Broca's area and Wernicke's area, form a dedicated network for the sorcery of language. One seems to handle the intricate choreography of producing speech, the muscle memory required to form a word, while the other is deeply involved in comprehending the river of words flowing from others. It is here that the chaotic symphony of sounds is decoded into narrative, into command, into plea. This neural architecture is not a blank slate we learn to write upon. It is an innate, intricate circuit board waiting for the software of a specific tongue. We are, it seems, hardwired for story. Is this biological predisposition the cradle of our humanity, or its cage? This instrument did not evolve in a vacuum to be played for an audience of one. Its true power was unlocked in the flickering firelight of the ancient world. Imagine a small band of early humans, huddled not just for warmth but for connection. The day's hunt is over. The dangers of the night are lurking just beyond the circle of light. And then a voice rises. It does not just grunt a warning. It weaves a tale. It describes the path of the mammoth, the hidden claw marks on the tree, the way the water tasted near the bitter berries. In that moment, knowledge, the most precious currency of survival, is transferred not through genes, but through sound. One person's experience becomes the tribe's inheritance. The voice becomes a living library, a timeless teacher. It binds the group together with shared myths, with stories of heroes and spirits that explain the terrifying and magnificent world around them. This collective wisdom, passed down through generations via the spoken word, allowed us to outcompete creatures far stronger and faster. We did not adapt to our environment alone. We used language to collectively remember our environment, to build upon the discoveries of those long gone. The voice was our first and most potent technology, the loom on which the fabric of culture was woven. Did our ancestors understand they were not just sharing information, but were in fact building a new world, one story at a time? That world, our modern world, is a testament to the enduring power of this ancient tool. The voice has scaled, amplified by technology, but its core function remains unchanged: to influence, to connect, to build. A politician's voice, booming across a packed arena, can ignite a revolution or plead for peace. It is the same instrument, wielded with the same biological mechanics as the child's, yet its vibrations can alter the fate of millions. In a quiet boardroom, a persuasive pitch, a story well told, can secure a partnership and shape an industry. And in the deepest, most intimate spaces of human life, the voice is the thread of our emotional fabric. A lullaby hummed in the dark is a spell of safety for a restless child. The raw rhythmic poetry of a rap verse gives voice to the anger and hope of a generation. The intimate conversational tone of a podcast creates a community of minds across vast distances, a digital campfire for the modern tribe. From the grand stage to the private whisper, the human voice remains the primary tool with which we construct our shared realities, negotiate our relationships, and imprint our consciousness upon the world. If our reality is built upon a foundation of stories, then who are the true architects, the speakers, or the words themselves? Yet, for all its creative power, this instrument holds a terrifying duality. The same vocal cords that can form a gentle lullaby can also twist into a searing insult. The same tongue that speaks words of love can drip with venomous deceit. Language is a blade that can perform surgery or commit murder. It can build a sanctuary or demolish a soul. A carefully chosen lie can unravel a lifetime of trust. A harsh word, spoken in a moment of anger, can etch a scar on the memory far deeper than any physical wound. We use this tool to write our laws and to declare our wars, to write poetry and to spread propaganda. It is the vehicle for our highest truths and our most devastating falsehoods. We are born with this weapon in our throats, and we spend a lifetime learning, often failing, to wield it responsibly. Does the capacity for cruelty make the voice a flawed instrument, or does it simply reveal the flawed nature of the hands and hearts that wield it? We have used this miraculous instrument to map the stars, to compose symphonies, to send declarations of love across oceans. We have built towering civilizations on the foundation of the spoken and written word. We can describe pain with such precision that a listener can almost feel it. We can articulate joy so vividly it becomes contagious. And yet, for all its influence, for all its descriptive power, the voice often meets its match. It can describe a heartbreak, but can it truly soothe it? It can articulate the contours of a deep psychic anguish, but the words often seem to float on the surface of something much darker and more profound. The voice can be a balm, but some wounds seem to exist in a place beyond its reach. The most profound human suffering is not a broken bone, but a broken spirit. Not a surface cut, but a silent, internal fracture. We can use our voices to scream into the void of such pain, but the echo that returns is often just our own loneliness. If our most powerful tool is rendered helpless in the face of this inner darkness, what does that say about the nature of the pain itself? And if language built the walls of this internal prison, could it perhaps also hold the key? A wounded stag stumbles upon the body of its fawn, taken by a predator hours before. It nudges the still form, emits a series of short, guttural cries into the silent forest, and then, as if a switch has been flipped, it turns. It moves on, its attention captured by the immediate need for forage, the distant sound of the herd, the perpetual present of survival. Its grief, while perhaps real in that moment, is a closed loop. It is an event, sharp and finite. Now, picture a human. A mother, a father, a child, a friend. The loss of a loved one does not conclude. It echoes. It can color every sunrise with a tinge of absence, transform a familiar melody into a gut-wrenching requiem, and stretch a single moment of sorrow across the entire canvas of a lifetime. Why? Why do we, alone it seems, possess this terrible, magnificent capacity to endure emotional pain, not for days, but for decades? This is not a flaw in our design, but perhaps the very signature of it. Our prolonged suffering is the shadow cast by our most brilliant light, the intricate, layered, and deeply paradoxical architecture of our own minds. The answer begins in the silent electrochemical storm within our skulls. Compared to the stag, or indeed most creatures on Earth, our neural landscape is one of extravagant complexity. We are not merely feeling machines, we are time travelers. Central to this is the limbic system, the ancient seat of emotion, a relic we share with the rest of the mammalian world. It is here that raw, immediate grief is generated, a primal scream of neural circuitry. But in humans, this ancient system is not the sole commander. It is locked in a constant, delicate dialogue with the prefrontal cortex, the newly evolved captain of the bridge. This region grants us the powers of metacognition, the ability to think about our own thinking. It is the engine of memory, of vivid recollection. It is the projector that can, without warning, screen a perfect, high-definition memory of a lost loved one's laughter. It is the architect of imagination, constructing elaborate scenarios of a future that can now never be. Our pain persists because we do not just feel the loss in the present. We relentlessly, and often unwillingly, rehearse it from the past and mourn it for a future that has been irrevocably altered. We are cursed and gifted with the ability to tie a simple emotional response to a narrative, weaving a single thread of sorrow into the entire fabric of our being. Our brains are not just recording the event, they are writing the epic poem of it, over and over again. This is not a new story. The evidence of this deep, abiding sorrow is etched not in our genes, but in stone and soil. Long before written language, before cities or empires, humans were already grappling with the profound weight of loss. Archaeologists unearth graves from tens of thousands of years ago that are more than just holes in the ground. They are statements. A Neanderthal burial in Shanidar Cave is found with traces of pollen, suggesting the body was laid to rest on a bed of flowers, a deliberate tender act that transcends mere disposal. A Cro-Magnon grave holds a young mother and her child, interred together, their bodies adorned with ochre and ivory beads, tools and ornaments placed carefully beside them for a journey we can only guess at. These are not the actions of creatures that simply move on. They are the birth of ritual, the dawn of ceremony. They speak of a belief, or at least a hope, that something persists beyond the breath. The act of mourning became externalized, formalized into art and practice. We began to paint our grief on cave walls, to chant it into existence around fires, to shape it into small clay figures. We created culture, in part, as a vessel to hold our collective pain, to prove to ourselves that a life could be so significant that its end required the entire community to stop, to acknowledge, to remember. This shared suffering became a strange kind of glue, binding groups together with the mutual recognition of a universal, inevitable price of attachment. And in our modern world, we have become the cartographers of this internal anguish. We have given names to its most relentless forms: the profound stillness of depression, the haunting reverberations of post-traumatic stress disorder, the complex, enduring ache of prolonged grief. We clinically map its pathways in the brain, we measure its chemical imbalances, we understand it as a pathology that can and should be treated. Yet, in the same breath, we have dedicated ourselves to the ancient art of healing it. We have built entire professions around talking, around unspooling the narrative of our pain to a listening ear. We turn to therapy not to erase the memory, but to change our relationship with it. We find solace in the abstract language of art, in the silent focus of meditation, in the communal release of music. We seek not to forget the loss, but to integrate it, to make the scar tissue strong and flexible, to learn how to carry the weight without being crushed by it. Our modern solutions are a fascinating fusion of the scientific and the spiritual, a testament to our ongoing struggle to manage a capacity that is both our burden and our birthright. So we must ask, is this profound emotional endurance a useless, cruel burden evolution stuck us with, a glitch in an otherwise efficient system? Or is it, in fact, the very mechanism that has propelled us toward deeper understanding and connection? The pain of a broken heart, the lingering trauma of a failure, the grief for a lost world. These are not merely injuries. They are also teachers. They are the forge in which empathy is tempered. How can we truly understand another's pain if we are incapable of holding our own? This deep, lasting emotional memory is the foundation of our morality, our art, our most profound bonds. It is the price we pay for love, for ambition, to envision a future different from our present. The same prefrontal cortex that tortures us with vivid memories of loss is also what allows us to feel the soaring joy of reunion, the satisfaction of a long-term goal achieved, the bittersweet warmth of nostalgia. We cannot have one without the other. The capacity for prolonged suffering and the capacity for profound meaning are two sides of the same, very human coin. We are the animals who remember, and therefore, we are the animals who mourn. We carry our pain because we are built to carry our past. Our consciousness is a vast, deep lake, and every significant event, especially the painful ones, is a stone dropped into its depths. The ripples spread outward, touching distant shores we cannot even see, altering the entire ecosystem of the self for years to come. This is the weight of memory, but it is also the source of our most unexpected resilience. For if we can hold sorrow so deeply, then we must also possess the equal, opposite capacity to hold joy, to cradle hope, to clutch a moment of beauty so tightly that it, too, becomes a permanent part of us. We can, against all logic, summon a smile from the depths of sorrow. We can even laugh, especially when there seems to be no reason to laugh at all. What strange survival instinct is that? What is a laugh, if not the momentary, triumphant defiance of a world that gives us every reason to cry? No other creature laughs like we do. It isn't a reflex for survival, not a simple response to physical need. So why do we do it? Why do we open our mouths, emit a series of short, explosive sounds, contort our faces, and shake with convulsions, all because someone slipped on a banana peel? The answer might be written not in our minds, but in our bodies. When laughter strikes, it's a neurological storm. Dopamine, that sought-after currency of reward, floods our circuits. Serotonin, the mood stabilizer, washes through us. This isn't just a feeling, it's a potent chemical cocktail designed to soothe. It lowers cortisol, the stress hormone, and for a few precious seconds, the weight of the world feels lighter. But this internal chemistry set is wired directly into our social world. Laughter is almost impossible alone. It craves an audience. It functions as a primitive, universal language, a signal flashing between individuals. All is well. There is no threat here. We are together. In the ancient dance of human connection, a laugh is the simplest, most honest step. We can trace the echoes of this social glue far back into our past. Imagine a fire, not a grand blaze, but a small, precious circle of light and warmth in an immense, dark world. Around it, figures are gathered. The day's hunt was long. Tensions simmer from a disagreement over resources. The hierarchy of the group feels fragile. Then someone mimics the clumsy stumble of a prey animal, or makes a face, or repeats a foolish sound from earlier in the day. A chuckle starts. It spreads, and soon the group is united in a shared roaring convulsion. In that moment, conflict dissipates. Social bonds are reinforced without a single word of complicated language. This collective laughter was a ritual as vital as any tool, a social technology that allowed early humans to smooth over conflicts, forge alliances, and maintain the group cohesion that was essential for survival. It was the sound of a tribe choosing harmony over discord. This ancient tool has been refined into an art form for the modern world. Today, our tribal fires are the glowing screens of comedy clubs and televisions. The stand-up comedian is our court jester, using laughter to speak uncomfortable truths to power. A satirical meme can topple a reputation faster than a volley of accusations. A sitcom laugh track cues us into a shared experience, a reminder that we are part of a community, even if we are watching alone in our living rooms. Laughter remains our most effective social lubricant, but we've also weaponized it. We use it to critique, to challenge, to cope with the absurdities and tragedies of modern life. It is the balm we apply to collective wounds, a way to process the incomprehensible by momentarily holding it at bay with a joyful noise. Yet, if laughter is purely a social adhesive, a tool for bonding and survival, then why does it sometimes appear in the most solitary and incongruous of places? A person alone, reading a book, suddenly barks out a laugh into the silent room. A soul in the depths of grief, receiving the most terrible news, lets out a sound that is half sob, half cackle. A laugh that seems to defy all logic and emotion. This is the laugh that isn't for anyone else. It doesn't signal safety or promote bonding. It is a private, almost biological eruption, a pressure valve for a psyche overwhelmed by stimuli, whether joy or despair. This solitary, desperate laugh whispers a secret, that this behavior is far more ancient and deeply rooted than its social function. It is a fundamental physiological release, a spasm of the human spirit that we do not fully command. So, is laughter a useless behavior or a survival weapon? Perhaps it is neither, and both. It is a biological relic that we have sculpted into a social cornerstone. It is a primal sound that predates words, a raw, unmediated expression that we share with the world and yet hoard for our most private moments. It connects us to others, even as it expresses our most isolated selves. We began with this sound, this strange exhalation of joy and pain. But if laughter was our first, most noisy language, what of its quieter, more poignant counterpart? What of the language that requires no sound at all, that speaks in a single salty drop tracing a path down a cheek? If laughter is the club, then perhaps tears are the cradle. But that is a different story altogether, one written not in sound, but in water and salt. After all, what is a truer signal of being human? The sound we make together, or the silence we keep alone? No one teaches us how to cry. It is a language written into our very flesh, a primal script we understand long before we can form a word. As newborns, red-faced and helpless, we use our tears to signal distress, to call for comfort, to survive. It is our first and most fundamental negotiation with the world. And as adults, the script remains, though the audience often fades. We cry in the silent darkness of our rooms, in the sterile solitude of a car, under a shower's anonymous spray. The need for the comfort remains, even when there is no one left to provide it. Why do we continue to speak this wordless saltwater language when we are utterly alone? Tears are more than just water. They are a complex biological cocktail, a precise chemical message brewed in the hidden laboratories of our lacrimal glands. Science tells us that not all tears are created equal. There are the basal tears that simply keep our eyes from drying into desserts. There are the reflexive tears that flood our vision to wash away an irritating speck of dust or the acidic bite of a chopped onion. But then, there is the third kind, the one that marks our species as uniquely strange in the animal kingdom: emotional tears. These are the tears of grief, of joy, of overwhelming frustration or profound relief. They are different. They contain a payload of stress hormones, leucine and enkephalin, a natural painkiller, and adrenocorticotropic hormone, a telltale signature of a system under siege. When we cry from feeling, we are not just expressing an emotion, we are quite literally flushing our stress out through our faces. It is a physiological pressure valve, a self-contained act of purification. But is the message only for ourselves, or is it a signal meant to be read by others? This biological signal finds its echo deep in the corridors of our past. Long before we could articulate the precise shades of our sorrow, we built cultures around the communal act of crying. In ancient Egypt, professional mourners, the kites, were hired to lead the lamentations at funerals. Their practiced, theatrical tears were not seen as a falsehood, but as a necessary catalyst, a way to guide the entire community into a shared expression of loss, to give a visible, audible shape to the grief that threatened to isolate each individual. In China, elaborate rituals of filial piety demanded demonstrations of tearful grief, their intensity a measure of respect for the departed. The Maya believed tears were a form of sacred water, an offering to the gods that could nourish the cycle of life and death. Across continents and millennia, we see this same pattern, the collective tear. It was a social glue, a public performance that said, "My pain is our pain. Your loss is my loss." The tear was not a sign of private weakness, but a public utility, a tool for building communal resilience. Did we, in our ancient hearts, understand the chemistry of empathy long before we had the words for it? The modern world has not abandoned this ancient language, though we often try to sanitize it, to relegate it to private spheres. Yet it persists, breaking through the cracks of our composed facades. It holds immense power. A single authentic tear welling in the eye of a witness can sway a jury's verdict more effectively than 100 points of logic. A politician's choked-up voice can humanize them, forging a connection that policy papers never could. Our most beloved films and stories are those that move us to tears, that provide a safe, cathartic space for this collective release. We sit in dark rooms, strangers united by the shared glistening on our cheeks, and feel for a moment less alone. The tear remains a potent social tool, a nonverbal plea that bypasses argument and appeals directly to our shared humanity. In a world saturated with words, with spin and misinformation, could the unspoken honesty of a tear be the most trustworthy currency we have left? But this powerful tool has a double edge, an inherent vulnerability that can be exploited. For if a tear can signal true vulnerability, it can also perform a masterful deception. The same gesture that signifies profound grief can be weaponized as emotional blackmail. The child who learns that tears can delay bedtime, the adult who uses them to win an argument or evade accountability, they are speaking the language with a corrupted accent. In the wrong hands, tears become a club disguised as a white flag. And even when the tears are genuine, their public display can be turned against the weeper. A crying man is often labeled weak, unprofessional, hysterical. A crying woman, manipulative or overly emotional. We fear that by revealing our rawest selves, we hand others a map to our weaknesses. Does the act of bearing our inner world through tears ultimately leave us more powerful or more exposed? Is the risk of being manipulated greater than the reward of genuine connection? Perhaps the answer is not to retreat from this vulnerability, but to lean into its terrifying complexity. The act of revealing one's inner state, whether through genuine tears or other means, is the very bedrock of understanding. It is a gamble, a offering made without guarantee of its return. It requires a receiver who is willing to listen, to interpret, to connect. And at the deepest, most fascinating level of this connection lies not just feeling, but simulation. Our ability to understand another's tears is predicated on our mind's incredible capacity to project itself into a reality that is not its own. We see a tear trace a path down a cheek, and something within us flickers. We imagine the weight that caused it. We feel the echo of that sorrow in our own chest. This is the miracle and the curse of human empathy. It allows us to bridge the immense gap between separate consciousnesses, to feel with another. But this same tool of connection, this ability to simulate another's pain inside the theater of our own minds, is also the source of our deepest shared anguish. To truly feel another's pain is to willingly take it upon oneself. It is a form of voluntary torture, a crossing of boundaries that can be as exhausting as it is beautiful. So, where does this leave us? If our greatest tool for connection is also a weapon we turn upon ourselves, what does that say about the price of truly knowing another? You see someone flinch in pain, and your own muscles tighten in a sympathetic wince. You watch a stranger suffer a moment of profound public shame, and a hot flush of embarrassment creeps up your own neck. It's an involuntary theft of experience, a fleeting residency inside another's skin. What is this strange magic that allows us, compels us, to live vicariously through the bodies and minds of others? This is not a simple emotional echo. It is the foundational tremor of a deep biological machinery humming within us all. We are, at our core, a species of mirrors. This uncanny ability to reflect the world inside ourselves begins not with conscious thought, but with a spark of electricity in the brain. Tucked within the premotor cortex and inferior parietal lobule, a special class of cells fires with a peculiar double duty. They ignite both when you perform an action, reaching for a ripe apple, say, and with equal fervor when you merely witness another performing that very same action. These are the mirror neurons, the biological stage upon which the drama of imitation is first rehearsed. They are the silent cellular translators converting the sight of a smile into the inner feeling of one, the observation of a sorrowful slump into a whisper of sadness in your own soul. This neural architecture is our first cradle of empathy, the primal gateway to understanding intention without a word being spoken. It is the mechanism that allows an infant to stick out its tongue in response to its mother, the invisible thread that teaches us how to wield a tool, to speak a word, to read the subtle map of emotions on a face. Yet this same system, so crucial for learning and connection, is also the birthplace of deception. For if the brain can simulate another's joy, can it not also learn to fake its own? Is the most convincing lie not first a perfect imitation of truth, rehearsed in the silent theater of these very cells? This biological gift did not simply make us kinder, it made us heirs to a vast and accumulated wisdom. Long before written language, before formal schools or structured curricula, our ancestors built their world through a relentless, exquisite act of copying. Archaeology and history tell a story not of solitary geniuses, but of meticulous mimics. One hominin, 1,000,000 years ago, painstakingly chips away at a stone, learning the precise angle and force needed to fashion a hand axe. Another watches, their own mirror neurons mapping the master's movements onto their own potential. They do not invent the axe from nothing. They imitate, they refine, they make it slightly better, slightly more efficient. This is how culture was transmitted, how technology propagated across continents and generations. It was a silent, cumulative dialogue of observation and repetition. The greatest survival advantage was not necessarily being the smartest innovator, but the most adept imitator, the one who could watch a rival's successful hunt and internalize its lessons, who could replicate a better way to kindle fire, to weave a shelter, to tell a story that would bind a tribe together. We stood on the shoulders of giants not by seeing further, but by copying their posture exactly. In our modern society, this ancient tool has been amplified to a deafening roar. It remains the bedrock of education. A medical student learns surgery by watching 1,000 procedures. A musician finds their voice by first echoing the masters. It is the engine of our art, the actor who disappears into a role, the novelist who makes you feel a character's despair, the filmmaker who projects you onto a screen. Video games represent the ultimate immersive simulation, placing you directly inside another's choices and consequences. Yet, this power has a twin shadow. The same mechanism that fosters learning and art also underpins the social contagion of mass hysteria, the copycat crimes that spread like a psychic virus. It fuels the fear of missing out, FOMO, an anxiety built entirely on simulating the curated experiences of others. It is the tool of the emotional scammer, who feigns affection by mimicking its outward signs, and the architecture of the deepfake, where reality itself can be hijacked by a flawless, malicious imitation. Our greatest tool for connection has become our most potent instrument for deception. We are flooded with simulations so convincing we forget to look for the source of the light they reflect. And so we arrive at the central, unsettling paradox of our mirrored nature. Simulation allows us to learn, to connect, to build civilizations through shared understanding. Yet, in its embrace, do we risk erasing ourselves? If we are constantly reflecting those around us, absorbing their desires, their anxieties, their behaviors, where does the reflection end and the original being begin? The line between the authentic and the performed becomes blurred, a shimmering mirage. We curate online personas that are imitations of imitations. We adopt the slang of a subculture, the aspirations of an influencer, the political anger of our chosen tribe. Is your taste truly your own, or a perfect composite of everything you've ever witnessed and admired? We use simulation to find ourselves, and in doing so, we can so easily get lost. Perhaps the boundary does not lie in the act of imitation itself, which is an inescapable biological and cultural fate. Perhaps the line is drawn not between the real and the fake, but in the meaning we assign to the performance. An actor on stage imitates a king's death, and we weep for the symbol of a fallen leader. A citizen salutes a piece of colored cloth and is willing to die for the nation it represents. The imitation is harmless. It is the meaning we graft onto it that holds all the power and all the peril. We are the only animal that can weep at a simulated tragedy, and the only one that can kill for an abstract idea. The simulation is merely the vessel, empty until we fill it with a significance that can, terrifyingly, become more real to us than life itself. What does it mean that our greatest strength, to see ourselves in another, is also the source of our most profound and dangerous illusions? A flag, a religion, a ring. None have fangs. None can attack. Yet, for these, a human being will lay down their life without a second thought. We kill for them. We die for them. We build our greatest civilizations upon their intangible foundations and watch those same civilizations crumble into dust when the symbols change meaning. They are the most powerful forces in human history, these abstract concepts made manifest, and they wield a power that is both magnificent and terrifying. They exist nowhere in the physical world, and yet they shape every inch of it. They are born in the deepest recesses of the human mind, a byproduct of a consciousness that became too powerful for its own good. This ability to see the world not just as it is, but as it could be, to imbue a simple piece of cloth with the soul of a nation or a gesture with divine significance, is our unique inheritance. It stems from a biological marvel, the prefrontal cortex. This part of our brain, a late bloomer in evolutionary terms, acts as a master conductor for a symphony of neural networks. It allows us to project ourselves forward and backward in time, to simulate realities that do not exist, and to bind those imagined realities to physical objects. A splash of red dye is not just a color. It becomes blood, sacrifice, and revolution. A circle of gold is not just metal. It becomes eternity, commitment, and power. This neural architecture is the loom upon which we weave the tapestries of meaning that cloak our naked existence. We are not merely sensing the world, we are incessantly writing a story about it, and symbols are the punctuation marks that give the narrative its weight and drama. What does it mean that our greatest strength is the ability to believe in things that are not real? The evidence of this storytelling urge is etched into the very stone of our past. Long before written language, deep in the flickering firelight of caves, our ancestors were already painting their symbols. The handprints on the walls of El Castillo or Chauvet were not just art. They were signatures, declarations of "I was here," a primal impulse to leave a mark that said more than a footprint. They carved figurines like the Venus of Willendorf, symbols of fertility and abundance, perhaps objects of ritual or hope in a harsh and unforgiving world. They gathered around totems, animals, or objects that embodied the spirit of a clan, a family, a people. These were the first flags, the first logos, the first gods. They were tools for survival as crucial as any spear, for they bound individuals together into a cohesive whole with a shared identity and a common purpose. A tribe that believed the same story could hunt together, raise children together, and face enemies together with a coordination that mere individuals could never muster. The cave was not just a shelter, it was the first cathedral, and the paintings were its stained glass, telling the stories that held the world together. Is our modern world truly so different, or have we just traded ochre and torchlight for pixels and neon? Indeed, the modern world is a jungle of symbols, each one vying for our allegiance, each one programming our behavior with silent, relentless efficiency. We pledge allegiance to flags, their patterns of stars and stripes weaving a spell of patriotism and belonging. We kneel before crosses and stars and crescents, symbols that point toward the infinite and give shape to our most profound questions of existence and morality. We proudly wear the swoosh of a sports brand or the bitten apple of a tech giant, allowing commercial logos to become badges of our identity, of the tribes we choose to belong to. These symbols command armies. They move markets. They can make a stranger a brother and a brother an enemy in the space of a single heartbeat. They are the invisible architecture of society, the rails upon which our collective actions run. A piece of cloth can make a soldier charge into certain death, and a word can ignite a war that burns for generations. The power is awesome, a testament to our ability to collaborate on a grand scale. But this same power contains a venomous paradox. If a symbol can unite millions in peace, what is to stop it from uniting millions in violence? This is the dark reflection in the symbol's gleaming surface. The very tool that builds can also be weaponized. The capacity for belief is also a vulnerability, a back door into the human psyche that can be exploited. The symbol, divorced from its original meaning, can become an empty vessel filled with fear, hatred, and blind fanaticism. It can be used to short-circuit critical thought, to replace nuanced understanding with simplistic us versus them dogma. The same mental machinery that allows a doctor to swear the Hippocratic Oath and see a symbol of healing can allow another to see a different symbol and fly a plane into a building. Is this talent for symbolism, then, our supreme adaptation, the key to our dominion over the planet? Or is it a profound psychological flaw, a glitch in our cognition that leaves us perpetually susceptible to mass delusion? Have we, in crafting the tools to build our world, also unknowingly forged the instruments of our own potential destruction? Navigating this labyrinth of meaning requires a compass older than the symbols themselves. It demands a return to a deeper, more ancient instinct, one that has whispered warnings to us since long before we could speak in words or conceive of flags. It is the instinct that tells a child to pull the covers over their head, the primal fear that quickens the pulse when the sun vanishes and the world is swallowed by the unknown. This fear is not a weakness, it is an ancient wisdom. In the darkness, our symbols lose their color. In the silence, their chants fade away. All that is left is the raw, unmediated reality of being a fragile creature in a vast, uncertain world. This fear is the bedrock beneath the shifting sands of our beliefs. It is the original anxiety from which all our symbols, our religions, our nations, our philosophies initially sprang as attempts to build fires against the endless, intimidating night. Perhaps the only way to avoid being consumed by the symbols we create is to never forget the dark from which they emerged. What truth might we find if we dare to listen to the oldest fear we possess? The lights go out. The world contracts to the space you can feel, not see. The familiar contours of your room dissolve into a formless, ink-wash void. A floorboard creaks, a sound so ordinary it is almost silent by day. But now it echoes like a thunderclap in the private theater of your skull. Your heart, a sudden and frantic drum, hammers against your ribs. Your breath catches, you know, with the logical modern part of your mind, that there is nothing there. The door is locked. The room is empty. Yet the primal part of you, the ancient tenant in the architecture of your brain, knows something else entirely. It knows that uncertainty is the hunting ground of danger. Why does this happen? Why does the simple absence of light trigger such a profound and visceral alarm? The answer begins not in the mind, but in the body. A lightning-fast cascade of chemistry and electricity older than civilization itself. When the light fails, your eyes strain, searching for pattern, for movement, in the visual noise. They find little. This lack of clear data is, in itself, the most potent signal. The amygdala, the brain's ancient sentinel, sounds the alarm. It doesn't wait for confirmation. Its job is to assume the worst. Instantly, it triggers the sympathetic nervous system, initiating the oldest ritual of animal life: fight or flight. Adrenaline floods your veins, sharpening your senses to a painful acuity. Your hearing becomes unnaturally keen, parsing every rustle and sigh of the house. Your muscles tense, coiled springs ready to unleash explosive action or frantic retreat. This is not a malfunction. This is a masterpiece of evolutionary over-engineering. The brain, faced with ambiguity, chooses to see a predator in every shadow rather than miss the one shadow that truly holds a predator. It is a system built on a simple, brutal calculus. A false alarm costs you a moment of panic. A missed alarm costs you your life. So we jump at nothing. We startle at silence. We are the descendants of the nervous, not the negligent. Is our fear then not a weakness, but the very echo of a survival strategy so successful it wrote itself into our genes? To understand the depth of this programming, we must step out of our safe, wired homes and into the deep night of our ancestors. Imagine the world before fire was tamed, before the artificial sun of a light bulb pushed back the horizon. The night was not empty. It was a different country, one ruled by different laws. In the velvet blackness beyond the firelight, eyes gleamed. The crack of a twig could be the wind, or it could be the footfall of a rival tribe, a saber-tooth, a prowling bear. The rustle in the grass was perhaps just the grass, but perhaps it was the coiling of a venomous snake. In that world, the cost of curiosity was maiming. The cost of courage was often death. The individuals who hesitated, who froze, who felt the chill of dread and retreated to the safety of the group or the high branch, they were the ones who lived to see the dawn. They were the ones who passed on their cautious genes. Their fear was not a phobia. It was a vital sense, as crucial as smell or sight. It was the sense of potential harm. The dark was not merely the absence of light. It was the presence of the unknown, the cloak of every conceivable threat. Our inherited terror is a fossilized memory of that world, a ghost in our neural circuitry that still whispers the old warnings. We no longer live in that world, but does the world we built ever truly silence the whispers from our past? Indeed, the predators have changed their shapes. The physical beasts that once stalked the perimeter of the firelight have largely vanished from our daily experience. Yet the fear they inspired did not dissipate. It simply found new vessels, new forms through which to express its ancient imperative. The modern darkness is less about tooth and claw and more about the shadows we cast upon ourselves. It is the anxiety that coils in the stomach at 3 a.m., when the world is asleep and all that remains are our own racing, unbidden thoughts. It is the insomnia born from a mind too alert to shut down, perpetually scanning for threats in the form of unpaid bills, unresolved conflicts, or social fears. Our culture endlessly recreates and ritualizes this primal fear in the stories we tell. The horror movie that makes us jump at a creak in the hallway, the thriller novel that quickens our pulse. We pay to be scared in a controlled environment, perhaps to practice, to placate, or to simply feel the ancient thrill of survival without its true cost. The monster under the bed is a modern myth, but the urge to check for it is a prehistoric command. Has our instinct not so much vanished as it has sublimated, transforming from a fear of what lurks in the dark to a fear of the darkness that lurks within us? And so we arrive at the central paradox. If we can rationally deconstruct this fear, if we can trace its lineage from the savannah to the suburb, if we can hold it up to the light of day and see its mechanics, why does its power remain undiminished? Why does a flicker of the light still clutch at our hearts? Why can knowledge not disarm instinct? The reasoning neocortex, the seat of our logic and our science, is a magnificent but recent addition to the human machine. It speaks in a slow, deliberate voice of analysis and nuance. But the older brain, the limbic system, speaks in the urgent, wordless language of survival. It does not debate. It acts. In the moment of perceived threat, its voice is a shout that drowns out the whisper of reason. We are creatures of two minds, one ancient and visceral, one modern and intellectual, forever bound in a tense and often contradictory partnership. We know the dark is empty, but we feel it is full. Which truth, then, is more real? The one we reason, or the one we feel in our very bones? Perhaps the persistence of this fear is the clearest evidence that our bodies and our deepest instincts are living relics. They are running software updated for a world that no longer exists, a world of immediate physical peril. Our civilization has transformed at a blinding pace, a sprint of mere millennia, but our biology evolves at the slow, stately walk of epochs. It has not yet caught up to the reality of locked doors and electric light. It may never. This lag, this evolutionary debt, is written into us in more ways than one. It is etched even in the very instruments we use to perceive the world and each other. Our eyes, those seemingly perfect orbs that drink in the light, are themselves palimpsests of an unfinished evolution. They hold a unique clue, a biological anomaly that hints at a different kind of survival, one not based on individual vigilance, but on collective understanding. For while we fear the dark alone, we conquered it together. And the tool that allowed for that may be found in a simple, overlooked detail, the unique, expansive white of the human eye. What if the key to building trust was visible in our gaze all along? Of all the primates, we are the only ones who truly wear our gaze on our sleeves, or more precisely, in our eyes. Look into the face of a chimpanzee, our closest living relative, and you will find dark, deep-set eyes, nearly swallowed by the shadows of a heavy brow. Their intentions are a mystery, their focus a secret, held close. Now look at a human. What you see is a stark, brilliant white canvas framing a circle of color, a window that broadcasts its direction to the world with startling clarity. It is an announcement, a signal. It seems like a profound vulnerability, this anatomical honesty. In a world of predators and prey, of competition and social maneuvering, why would we evolve to reveal the very target of our attention, the direction of our next thought, our next desire, or our next fear? This was not a design flaw. It was perhaps our first and most powerful social network, woven not from code, but from biology. This expansive white sclera, the so-called white of the eye, is far more than a simple structural support for the iris. It is a high-contrast background, a biological billboard that makes the slightest shift in gaze unmistakable. Where a gorilla's glance is a private thought, a human's glance is a public declaration. This is the bedrock of our nonverbal communication, a silent language that operates beneath the chatter of words. It allows a mother to wordlessly guide her child's attention to a flower, its petals unfurling in the morning sun. It lets a hunter, crouched in the tall grass, lock eyes with his companion, and, with a mere flicker of his gaze towards the grazing herd, coordinate a plan without a single uttered sound. This transparency is the currency of trust. When you can see where someone is looking, you have a window into their intentions. You can gauge their honesty, their interest, their fear. This shared visual field, this communal pool of attention, allowed early humans to build something extraordinary, a collaborative mind. We became a species that could not just see the world, but could see the world together, pointing our collective consciousness at a problem, a project, a dream. The evidence for this is etched not in stone, but in the very architecture of our faces. Evolutionary biologists suggest that as our societies grew more complex, requiring greater cooperation and communication, the pressure to be understood, to be literally on the same page, shaped our physiology. Our faces flattened, our brows receded, all to make room for this new tool of connection. It was a strategic adaptation for a profoundly social species. The eyes became the linchpin of social bonding, allowing us to build empathy on a scale no other animal could manage. We could share awe at a lightning storm, mutual warning at the approach of a predator, or silent grief over a fallen friend. This shared gaze was the cradle of culture itself. It is the unspoken foundation of every human interaction that followed. From the ancient storyteller holding the tribe spellbound with a look, to the modern actor conveying a universe of emotion in a single close-up shot, the speaking eyes of poetry and film are not a metaphor. They are a biological reality, a testament to a communication system that operates faster and often more truthfully than language ever could. Yet, for every gift, there is a hidden cost. This very transparency, this glorious vulnerability that forged our bonds, carries a latent danger. If our eyes are a window to the soul, then they are also a doorway through which others can peer in, to judge, to criticize, to exploit. The same tool that builds trust can also be used to measure it and find it wanting. The knowledge that our gaze is being constantly monitored, interpreted, and dissected introduces a subtle, pervasive anxiety. Are they looking at me? What do they see? Am I being accepted, or am I being sized up for exclusion? In our ancient past, to be cast out from the shared gaze of the tribe was a death sentence. That primal fear is woven into our neurobiology. Our eyes, designed to connect us, also make us exquisitely aware of when we are not connected, when the thread of a mutual glance is broken. This is the paradox of the white sclera. It is both our greatest connector and our most sensitive receptor of social threat. It grants the profound comfort of being seen and understood, but it also opens us to the exquisite pain of being judged and rejected. So we mastered the art of the gaze, but in doing so, we also became slaves to it. We learned to sculpt our appearance, to manage the impression we make in those few crucial seconds of a first glance. We began to worry not just about what our eyes are saying, but about the vessel they are housed in, the face, the body, the entire package that is presented for public consumption and evaluation. The relentless, judging gaze we evolved to serve now turns inward, and we become our own most critical observer. If the eyes are the window, then what happens when we become terrified of what they might see reflected back? You look into the mirror and see something wrong, a flaw, an asymmetry, a feature that just doesn't measure up. Later, you scroll through a feed of polished lives and sculpted bodies, and a quiet, cold feeling settles in your stomach, a sense of being less. It's easy to dismiss this as a sickness of our modern age, a poison distilled by algorithms and airbrushing. But that feeling, that deep-seated anxiety about how you are perceived, is far older than any social network. Its roots are not in silicon, but in ice. This is not a story of the digital era. It is a story from the heart of the Ice Age. We are, at our core, social animals. Our survival has never been a solitary pursuit. For the vast stretch of our history, to be alone was to be prey. And so, our minds evolved a brilliant and at times cruel mechanism for maintaining our place in the tribe, the constant, unconscious act of social comparison. Nestled within the neural architecture of our brains are specialized regions, like the fusiform face area, fine-tuned to recognize and decode the human face in an instant. It reads the subtle arch of an eyebrow, the set of a jaw, the faint curve of a smile, not merely as aesthetic details, but as vital data. This face is a friend, a rival, a potential mate, a threat. Our value, our status, our very chance to pass on our genes was once, and in many ways still is, calculated in this silent, instantaneous arithmetic of appearance. The anxiety we feel is the ghost of an ancient alarm system, a primal whisper warning us that to be deemed unattractive was to risk being deemed unnecessary. To be pushed to the margins was a death sentence. This ancient obsession with our social skin is etched not just in our genes, but in the very artifacts our ancestors left behind. Long before the first Instagram post, there was ochre. Our prehistoric forebears ground this red earth into pigment and used it to paint their skin, to mark their bodies with symbols of belonging, of power, of identity. They pierced shells and teeth to string into necklaces, adorning themselves not for some abstract concept of beauty, but as a declaration. I am part of this group. I have the skill to acquire this. I am valuable. The earliest known examples of art are not landscapes on cave walls, but personal ornaments. A bead, a bracelet, a tattoo, these were the first social media profiles, broadcasting status and affiliation in a silent, Stone Age language. The drive to curate our appearance, to present a version of ourselves that commands respect and attracts alliance, is a fundamental human impulse. It was the original currency of connection. The modern world did not invent this game. It simply gave it a new, infinitely more complex playing field. The village square has been replaced by the global theater of TikTok and Instagram. The approving nod of a tribesman is now quantified in likes and shares. The physical competition for resources has morphed into a psychological competition for attention and validation. The fashion industry, cosmetic surgery, fitness culture, and the tragic prevalence of eating disorders all are extreme manifestations of this same ancient drive, the desperate need to look like the one who is praised. We are still trying to read the room, only now the room is the entire world, and the expressions on the faces staring back at us are filtered, curated, and often completely fabricated. The stakes feel just as high because the underlying fear is the same, the fear of social exclusion. The arena has changed, but the primal tournament of appearance continues, its rules rewritten for a digital age, its weapons sharper, and its audience vaster than any Ice Age hunter could have ever imagined. Yet this leads us to a quiet, philosophical rebellion. If we know, intellectually, that so much of appearance is an illusion, a social construct, a game, why does its power over us remain so visceral, so absolute? Why do we grant this surface-level perception the authority to define our deepest sense of self-worth? Perhaps it is because the reflection we seek in the eyes of others is not merely a reflection of our face, but a reflection of our soul. We are not truly anxious about the shape of our nose or the size of our waist. We are terrified that these features are the language through which the world will misread our entire story. We fear that our outer shell will betray our inner self, that a perceived flaw will be mistaken for a fundamental failing. We don't crave beauty. We crave the assurance that our exterior accurately represents the worth we feel within, and that it will be accepted. This desperate need to control how we are perceived, to align the outer self with the inner narrative, points to something far more profound and dangerous than vanity. It demands the evolution of a most cunning skill. To bridge the gap between how we are and how we wish to be seen, we must learn to curate, to emphasize, to conceal, to deceive, and in turn, To survive in a world of social deceivers, we must become adept at peeling back the layers, at searching for the truth behind the eyes. This dance between the signal and the signal reader, between the crafted image and the suspicious gaze, is the most delicate and consequential arms race in human history. It is the silent war fought behind every smile and every scrutinizing glance. For if we are all both the artist and the critic of our social portraits, then what does it mean when the very tools we use to connect become instruments of illusion? We know a child is lying. It's a knowledge that seems to settle in our bones before it ever reaches our conscious minds. The eyes that dart away, refusing to meet our gaze, not with defiance, but with a frantic internal search for an escape route that doesn't exist. The voice, usually a clear stream of chatter, now hitches and stumbles over the newly fabricated story, a little too detailed, a little too rehearsed. The hands that fiddle with a seam of clothing, as if trying to physically stitch the lie into the fabric of reality. Why do we know? Is it something we learned? A cultural script we've all been taught? Or is it something far older? A whisper from our deepest past that says, here is a fracture in the truth? Could it be that we are, in fact, born with the innate capacity to both deceive and to detect deception? This dance of lie and detection begins not in the courtrooms or the tense family living rooms of our modern world, but in the ancient shadowy theater of the human brain. It is a biological paradox, an arms race waged within the confines of our own skulls. To lie requires a breathtaking symphony of cognitive functions. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of executive control, must first suppress the truthful response, the initial impulse that rises from the well of memory. Then, it must laboriously construct an alternative narrative, a parallel reality spun from whole cloth. Meanwhile, the limbic system, the raw emotional core of our being, reacts to this internal conflict. It sends out distress flares in the form of stress hormones, triggering the subtle physiological changes we've learned to recognize. The increased heart rate, the slight tremor, the micro-expressions that flash across the face for a fraction of a second. A brief betrayal of the fear or guilt the conscious mind is working so hard to conceal. But in a fascinating twist of evolution, the very same brain that grows proficient in this art of manipulation also hones its ability to detect it. We become finely tuned instruments for perceiving inconsistency, for sensing the dissonance between a spoken word and a clenched jaw, between a claim of innocence and the scent of fear. Our neural architecture is both the forger and the authenticator, the liar and the lie detector, locked in an eternal, intimate struggle. This internal struggle did not emerge in a vacuum. It was forged in the fire of necessity, on the vast savannas and in the dense forests where our ancestors took their first steps as a species. Imagine an early human band, a small cluster of individuals whose survival depended utterly on cooperation and trust. Knowledge was shared currency: where to find water, which berries were poisonous, how to track a migrating herd. In such a world, a lie was not a social faux pas. It was an existential threat. The individual who falsely claimed a predator was gone, or who hoarded food while the group starved, jeopardized everyone. Their deception could mean death. Consequently, the ability to spot a liar, to sense the malcontent or the cheat before their actions could bring ruin, became a paramount skill. Those who were gullible, who took every statement at face value, likely found themselves and their kin at a severe disadvantage. They were exploited, their resources taken, their trust broken. Over thousands of generations, the keenest lie detectors survived and passed on their genes. We are the descendants of the wary, the slightly paranoid, the ones who could look into another's eyes and sense the shadow of a hidden agenda. Our modern discomfort with a shifting gaze is an ancient alarm system, a relic from a time when reading the truth in a face was as crucial as reading the weather in the sky. And so we arrive in our modern world, a landscape so complex it would be unrecognizable to our ancestors. Yet we navigate it with their ancient tools. We have simply given them new names and sophisticated technologies. The intuitive reading of body language has been codified into entire fields of study. The detection of a fleeting micro-expression is now the purview of high-definition cameras and artificial intelligence trained to see what the human eye might miss. Voice stress analysis software seeks to quantify the tremor we once only felt intuitively. We have professionalized suspicion, building systems to hunt for the lie in the courtroom, the boardroom, and the airport security line. But the game has changed. We no longer lie merely to survive a harsh physical world. We lie to navigate a harsh social one. We tell white lies to lubricate the gears of daily interaction, to spare feelings, to avoid conflict. We construct curated versions of ourselves on digital platforms, lives of filtered perfection designed to elicit envy or approval. The stakes are often social capital rather than physical survival, yet the old machinery whirs to life all the same. Our primal lie detector now buzzes faintly when a politician's smile doesn't quite reach his eyes, when a lover's story has one too many convenient details, when an advertisement feels too perfect to be true. We are using a Stone Age instrument to dissect a digital age reality. Is it any wonder we so often feel a deep, inarticulate sense of distrust, a background hum of anxiety that something, somewhere, is not quite real? This leads us to a profound and unsettling paradox. If evolution equipped us all with the capacity to deceive and the tools to see through deception, then is human society ultimately just an endless, exhausting game of mental chess? A perpetual arms race where lies become more sophisticated and our detection methods become more refined in a cycle without end. Every interaction potentially layered with subtext, every statement a potential move in a game of manipulation and defense. It is a bleak and cynical vision, one that suggests a fundamental isolation, a world where true connection is perpetually undermined by the very skills that allowed us to connect in the first place. Yet this is not the whole story. There is a counterforce, a mysterious and powerful ability that allows the game to continue without descending into absolute paralysis. It is the human capacity for trust, a leap of faith that often borders on the irrational. Despite our sophisticated lie detection hardware, we choose to believe. We believe our partners when they say they love us. We believe our friends when they offer comfort. We believe the scientist we've never met who describes the fabric of the universe. This trust is not based on a flawless audit of the evidence. It is often a willing suspension of our own cynical disbelief. It is the glue that holds the entire fragile experiment of society together. Without it, cooperation would shatter, commerce would halt, and love would be impossible. We are born detectors of lies, yes, but we are also born believers in truths. We constantly navigate the tension between the protective shield of skepticism and the bridge of trust. So perhaps the real question isn't about how we catch a lie, but about why we ever choose to believe a truth. What is it that allows us to quiet the ancient, wary voice in our heads, to take that leap into the unknown, to make ourselves vulnerable? What is the source of that courageous and perhaps foolish act of faith? And if this delicate balance between suspicion and trust is what allows society to function, then what happens when that trust is broken not by a simple lie, but by a deeper, more personal failure? What is the internal mechanism that punishes us for our deceptions, even when we are not caught? It is a private reckoning, a hot flush that needs no audience, a feeling that echoes long after the lie has been told, a primitive moral compass that guided us long before laws or gods were there to point the way. Have you ever felt the hot rush of shame without a single word of reprimand? That sudden, desperate wish to disappear, triggered only by a glance, a silence, a raised eyebrow? No law accused you, no authority figure passed judgment. Yet you became both the accused and the judge, handing down a sentence of crushing invisibility from within your own mind. This internal tribunal, this silent, searing verdict, is one of the most universal and perplexing human experiences. It feels uniquely personal, a private failing, and yet its mechanics are etched into the very bedrock of our biology, an ancient script we all carry. The physical manifestation of shame is a language understood by every culture on Earth. The The blood rising to the cheeks, the instinct to lower the gaze and bow the head, the desire to make the body smaller, to retreat. These are not learned behaviors, but primal reflexes. They are the body's ancient, involuntary broadcast signal. This reaction is deeply wired into our neural circuitry, particularly within the prefrontal cortex, the brain's sophisticated command center for social navigation. It's here that we simulate the perceptions of others, running constant calculations on how we are being seen. And coursing through this system is a chemical often associated with love and bonding: oxytocin. This is the paradox. The very hormone that facilitates trust and connection also sharpens our social awareness to a painful point, making us exquisitely sensitive to the threat of exclusion. It is the biochemical price of admission to the tribe, a reminder that belonging is conditional. What does it say about us that the neural pathways for connection and for crippling self-consciousness are so intimately, so painfully intertwined? Long before the concepts of sin or statute were codified into law, human communities had a powerful tool for maintaining order: the court of public opinion. In the small, interdependent bands of our ancestors, survival was a collective project. To be cast out was a death sentence. Therefore, the most effective deterrent against behavior that threatened group cohesion wasn't a prison cell, but a look, a collective frown of disapproval, a turning away of faces, a shared silence. These were the weapons that enforced the earliest social contracts. Shame was the internalized guardian of these rules. It was the early warning system, the visceral rehearsal of exile that kept individuals in line, not out of a rational understanding of justice, but out of a deep animal fear of being left alone in the wilderness. The emotion we now experience as a private torment was once a public safeguard, a social immune response. Is our most personal feeling of inadequacy actually a fossilized echo of a communal survival strategy? This ancient tool has not been retired. It has simply been refurbished for the modern world. We no longer live in small bands, but we are still citizens of villages, some physical, many digital. Our concept of face or honor, the dread of public scandal, the fear of being canceled or ridiculed online, these are the contemporary arenas for this ancient drama. Much of what we call modern morality is not, upon close inspection, a carefully reasoned ethical framework. It is often a performance aimed at avoiding this very feeling. We follow unwritten rules not because we have logically deduced their value, but because we fear the cold chill of social disapproval. The law deals with actions, but shame polices thoughts, desires, and intentions. It is the shadow law, the unspoken code that governs far more of our behavior than we might care to admit. If our moral compass is so often calibrated by the fear of embarrassment, how can we ever be certain we are acting rightly and not just obediently? But if shame is a tool, it is a dangerously double-edged one. Its power to enforce norms is also the power to crush dissent, to enforce conformity, and to silence the authentic self. When a society wields shame as a weapon, it can force individuals into lives of quiet desperation, lives lived for an audience rather than from a core of truth. The same mechanism that once prevented a hunter from hoarding meat can now prevent a person from embracing their identity, their love, or their ideas. It can be the invisible chain that keeps people in line with oppressive traditions, the internalized voice of a bigot that a person then turns upon themselves. This is the dark potential of our social glue. It can cement us together, but it can also entomb individuals within the group. If the fear of being seen poorly can override the courage to be oneself, is shame ultimately a force for social harmony, or for a certain kind of soul-deadening tyranny? Perhaps the path through this paradox is not to eradicate shame, but to understand its origin, to look past the heat in our cheeks and locate the deeper, colder fear that fuels it. The fear of being seen as wrong, as flawed, as inadequate, is ultimately a fear of a kind of social death, a rehearsal for the ultimate exclusion. But could this, in turn, be a proxy for a more fundamental terror? The shame response is an acute social preview of a more absolute vanishing act. We fear the group's judgment because, on some primordial level, we equate banishment from the tribe with non-existence. The blush of shame is a fleeting, living echo of a much greater silence. What if our deepest social fear is merely a dress rehearsal for the final curtain, a shadow cast by the one truth we all must eventually face alone? Have you ever jolted awake in the dead of night, your heart hammering against your ribs, seized by the visceral, unshakable thought, one day I will truly be gone? It might be sparked by a stray cough in the darkness, a sudden, unexplained pain, or the near miss on the highway that afternoon, a screech of tires, a flash of adrenaline, and the world snaps into a terrifying crystalline focus. In that sliver of a second, the mundane backdrop of your life tears open, revealing the profound and fragile stage upon which every one of our dramas plays out. This is not a morbid fixation. It is a uniquely human awakening. To brush against the reality of our own end is to feel, for a moment, the breathtaking weight of being alive at all. This ability to project ourselves into the abyss of our own non-existence is a strange and magnificent anomaly in the natural world. An animal flees from immediate danger, driven by a primal instinct for survival hardwired into its very cells. But we can lie in a sunlit field and contemplate the sun's eventual death, or hold a loved one's hand and feel a pang of sorrow for a future loss we can already, painfully, imagine. This is the gift and the burden of our metacognition, the brain's ability to turn its gaze inward upon itself. We are not just thinking. We are thinking about our thinking, aware of our own awareness. Our sophisticated neural architecture, a complex web of prefrontal cortex and synaptic connections, allows us to run simulations of realities that have not and may never come to pass. We are the only creatures who carry the seed of our own ending within the cradle of our consciousness, nurturing it not as a certainty to be ignored, but as a concept to be explored. It is this internal theater of the mind that allows us to ask the question that no other species can formulate. What does it mean for this, all of this, to stop? The evidence of this deep-time conversation with mortality is etched not in genetic code, but in stone and soil. Long before written language, our ancestors were grappling with the same midnight shudder, the same profound unease. We find their answers in the silent eloquence of archaeology. A Neanderthal grave in Shanidar Cave, dusted with ancient pollen, suggests a final offering of flowers, a gesture that speaks of more than just ritual. It whispers of care, of a belief that the journey might continue somewhere else. The elaborate Egyptian tombs, stocked with goods for the afterlife, the terracotta army guarding a Chinese emperor in death, the Viking chieftain buried with his ship. These are not merely monuments to the dead. They are colossal, enduring acts of imagination. They are humanity's first attempts to build a bridge across the unimaginable chasm, to dress the void in stories of underworlds, heavens, and reincarnations. Our forebears did not just know death. They envisioned it, feared it, negotiated with it, and through this very process, they began to define what it meant to live a life worth memorializing. This primordial negotiation has since spiraled into the vast and intricate tapestry of modern human society. Look around. Almost every pillar of our civilization can be traced back to a reaction against the void. Religion offers narratives of transcendence, promising a continuity that soothes the terror of the finite. Art, from the tragic plays of the Greeks to the haunting melodies of a blues song, is a way of giving form to our collective anxiety and beauty, a method of screaming, "I was here," into the coming silence. Medicine is our most direct rebellion, a systematic war waged cell by cell against the inevitable decay. Even the mundane act of buying insurance is a profound leap of faith in a future self, a bet placed against the chaos of chance. All of it, a magnificent, sprawling defense mechanism against the knowledge that we are temporary. And from this very defense mechanism springs our most potent drive. If our time is limited, then it must be infused with meaning. The awareness of the end is the engine of our passion, the invisible hand that pushes us to create, to connect, to love more deeply, as if to leave a mark that the inevitable erosion of time will struggle to wipe away. Yet, here lies the paradox, the central tension of the human condition. If this awareness is the source of so much meaning, what happens when the gaze into the abyss becomes a constant, unblinking stare. Can the mind truly bear the weight of its own extinction without collapsing under the pressure? To be perpetually haunted by the finish line is to risk never truly running the race. It can curdle ambition into apathy, twist connection into a fear of future loss, and paint every joy with the faint gray tint of its own eventual passing. This is the shadow side of our great gift. The very tool that allows us to build cathedrals and compose symphonies can also become a prison of anxiety, a loop of existential dread where the question, "What is the point?" echoes back with a terrifying silence. Is it possible that to live fully, we must at times find a way to forget what we know? Perhaps the way forward is not to resolve this tension, but to dance within it. The human solution to the problem of death may not be to conquer it through reason or to ignore it through distraction, but to engage in a delicate, continuous act of pretense. We learn to perform our lives, to hold the knowledge of the end in one hand and the vibrant, urgent reality of the present in the other, without letting the two touch. We create rituals, traditions, and daily routines that build a wall against the infinite, allowing us to operate within the comforting illusion of permanence. Just for a day, just for an hour, we agree to pretend that our projects matter, that our loves are eternal, that the show will go on precisely because we know, deep down, that it will not. This is not self-deception in the service of cowardice. It is the evolutionary social strategy of breathtaking sophistication. It is the psychological mechanism that allows a species aware of its own doom to still plant trees whose shade it will never enjoy. But this same ability to pretend, to wear a mask for the world, carries its own unique cost. If we can pretend that death isn't real for a while, what else can we pretend? Can we so easily separate the performance from the performer? This mastery of pretense, this social sleight of hand, raises a quieter, more intimate question. If we can so convincingly act okay, act happy, act in love, how can we ever be certain we are truly known? A person laughs in a crowd, a loud, contagious sound that ripples through the group. Later, in the sterile quiet of a bathroom, that same person cries, the sobs muffled by a towel. A child, wide-eyed and earnest, claims a stomachache to avoid a day at school. You have at some point adjusted your posture, modulated your voice, or painted a smile over a private sorrow to navigate the world. Have you ever considered that you are the lead actor in the ongoing performance of your own life, playing a role so convincingly that even you, at times, might be persuaded by the act? We know how to pretend. It is a fundamental human skill, as innate as breathing, yet infinitely more complex. This is not merely about uttering a white lie or hiding a disappointment. This is a deep, biological, and cultural orchestration that allows us to coexist, collaborate, and sometimes, tragically, lose ourselves within the intricate societies we have built. The act of pretense is the invisible thread woven into the very fabric of human connection, a tool for survival that can become a gilded cage. The biological stage for this performance is set deep within the architecture of our brains. It is lit by the flicker of mirror neurons, a specialized network that fires not only when we perform an action, but also when we observe that same action performed by another. See someone smile, and a ghost of that smile activates within your own neural pathways. Witness a wince of pain, and your brain echoes the sensation. This is not mere empathy. It is the fundamental machinery of simulation. It allows us to internally rehearse the actions and emotions of others, to understand them from the inside out. This neural mirror is the bedrock upon which we build our acts of pretense. It is why a forced smile can, however faintly, trigger a corresponding shift in mood, and why we can so effectively project a feeling we do not wholly possess. This internal simulation is given voice and form by our social cortex, the evolved conductor of our interpersonal symphony. It processes a constant, dizzying stream of social cues, a subtle shift in tone, a micro-expression flashing across a face for a fraction of a second, the angle of a shoulder. This region then composes the appropriate response, the suitable performance. It tells our hand to offer a firm handshake when we feel timid. It sculpts our face into a mask of attentive interest during a dull lecture, and it teaches us to nod in sympathy even when our minds are elsewhere. This is pretense not as deceit, but as social language, a complex, unspoken grammar of gestures and expressions that allows us to signal our intentions and navigate the delicate web of human relationships. We are not just pretending with words. We are performing with the entire instrument of our body, a biological imperative for connection. If our consciousness is the playwright, then is this intricate neural machinery merely the loyal stage crew, or does it sometimes seize the pen and write the lines itself? Long before we built stages or wrote scripts, we were already performing on the ancient, unforgiving stage of survival. Our ancestors did not have the luxury of always being their authentic selves. In the face of a predator, the most effective strategy was often not to fight, but to play dead, a perfect, petrifying act of pretense that meant the difference between life and death. Within early tribal hierarchies, displaying unquestioning submission to a stronger rival was another form of theater, a performance designed to avoid conflict and ensure one's place within the safety of the group. To show true defiance or true fear could be fatal. Pretense was, quite literally, a shield. This instinct for performance quickly evolved from individual survival into the cornerstone of collective culture. Around the flickering light of primal fires, our ancestors began to engage in rituals that were elaborate exercises in shared pretense. They painted their bodies with ochre and ash, donning the skins of animals to become something other than themselves. In these sacred ceremonies, a shaman would not merely describe a spirit, he would channel it, his voice changing, his movements becoming alien. The entire tribe would participate in this collective fantasy, reinforcing social bonds, transmitting knowledge, and touching the numinous through a agreed-upon suspension of reality. These rituals were the first theaters, and their power lay in a communal agreement to believe in the performance. Was this sacred pretense a way to touch a deeper truth? Or was it the moment we first learned to hide from ourselves behind a mask of meaning? The modern world has not diminished this ancient art. It has simply built a vast, intricate new stage with countless stages and ever-changing roles. We now navigate a world that demands a portfolio of performances. There is the professional self, the competent, reliable, and often emotionally neutral persona we present in meetings and emails. There is the social media self, a curated gallery of highlights, filtered and polished into an idealized narrative of happiness and success. There is the self we present to our parents, which may differ from the self we share with our friends or our children. We perform courtesy to strangers, patience in long queues, and enthusiasm at mandatory fun. These roles are the grease that keeps the enormous, complex machine of society running smoothly. They are the modern equivalent of the tribal submission ritual, a way to maintain harmony and secure our place within the tribe. But a performance sustained for too long can seep into the skin of the actor. The line between the role and the self begins to blur. The professional mask, worn for 40, 50, 60 hours a week, can become fused to the face beneath. The constant curation of a digital persona can lead to a quiet, gnawing sense of emptiness, a dissonance between the polished image online and the messy, uncertain human holding the phone. We perform so constantly, so seamlessly, that we risk losing the backstage area altogether. We forget what it feels like to not be on. In a world that rewards the perfect performance, is there any space left for the unscripted, imperfect self to simply exist without an audience? Herein lies the profound paradox of our pretending. This magnificent ability, honed by evolution and refined by culture, is the very thing that can breed the most profound loneliness. We use our skill to connect, to present a palatable, acceptable version of ourselves to the world. Yet, in doing so, we build an invisible wall. We feel known for our performance, but unseen in our truth. We connect as actors, but rarely as souls. We can be surrounded by a crowd of admirers who love the character we play, yet feel utterly isolated because the person we are has never been introduced. The performance that was meant to ensure our survival within the tribe now threatens the survival of our authentic self. If connection is the goal, Why does the very tool we use to achieve it so often leave us feeling more disconnected than ever? And so perhaps the ultimate human skill is not the mastery of pretense, but the courage to occasionally lay it down. It is the audacity to be vulnerable, to be uncertain, to be imperfectly real in a world that demands polished fiction. It is not about abolishing the performance altogether. That would make society impossible, but about remembering that we are the actors, not the roles. It is about finding those rare, precious spaces and people with whom we can step off the stage, wipe away the makeup, and simply be. This is not a final destination, but a continuous, conscious choice. The true superpower may lie in the quiet courage to be honest within the beautiful, contradictory, and miraculous limits of a single human body. A body that knows both how to shine with a false light and how to sit, content, in its own gentle, unadorned darkness. But if this act of being is the greatest performance of all, what stories do we tell ourselves to make it believable? You don't remember the long lecture, but you still remember a small story from your childhood. You weren't convinced by a logical argument. You were swayed by a story. Why is that? It feels like a minor magic trick, a quiet theft of your attention, leaving behind not a list of facts, but a feeling, a vivid scene etched into memory. The dry data of the world fades, but the narrative persists, echoing in the chambers of the mind long after the teller has fallen silent. What is this peculiar power that a simple tale holds over the cold, hard truth of a statistic? This power begins not in the pages of a book, but in the very architecture of our minds. Our brains are not cold, objective filing cabinets for information. They are ancient, organic processors wired for survival. They crave pattern, sequence, causality. Information arrives in a chaotic barrage of sensory input, and the brain's first, most vital task is to impose order upon this chaos. It does so by weaving a thread through events, spinning them into a linear narrative. This happened, which led to that, and therefore, a causes be. This neural preference for story is a deep-seated inheritance. It is how we learn to track prey across a savanna, reading the story written in broken twigs and soft earth, and how we learn to avoid predators by imagining the terrifying consequence of a misstep. A list of disjointed facts about a tiger is forgettable. The story of the time you barely escaped one, with its rising tension, its heart-pounding climax, and its relieved resolution, is unforgettable. The brain encodes it more deeply, wrapping the information in the emotional fabric of fear and relief, making it readily accessible for future use. We don't just remember the story, we relive it. So, when information is embedded within a narrative, it bypasses our analytical resistance and slips directly into our memory, cloaked in the compelling guise of experience. Is our consciousness then merely the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves, a continuous reel of cause and effect playing in the theater of the mind? This biological inclination did not just shape individual thought, it built civilizations. Before the written word, before libraries and hard drives, there was the spoken story. Our ancestors did not pass down their wisdom through bullet-pointed memos. They gathered around fires and under star-strewn skies and told tales. The knowledge of which plants healed and which ones poisoned was woven into the story of the curious child who wandered too far. The strategies for hunting a mammoth, a coordinated, dangerous endeavor, were not a manual, but an epic, recounted with gestures and rhythm, each telling, reinforcing the lesson. The very origins of the universe, the reason for the sun and the moon, the nature of death and love, all were explored not through abstract theorems, but through the rich, symbolic language of mythology. These stories were the original vessels of knowledge, carrying the collective intelligence of a people across generations. They were the glue of culture, transforming individual experience into shared understanding. A people's identity was, and in many ways still is, a collection of stories they agree to believe in. They weren't just recounting events, they were constructing a shared reality, a common cradle of meaning from which all members of the tribe could drink. Does this mean that our most profound truths are not found in data, but are born from and sustained by the act of collective storytelling? The fire pit has been replaced by the screen, the shaman by the advertiser, but the fundamental machinery remains unchanged. Modern society, for all its technological sophistication, runs on stories. A commercial is never just about the specifications of a car. It is a miniature story about freedom, status, adventure, or belonging. A political campaign is a battle of narratives, a contest to see whose story about the nation's past and future resonates most powerfully with the electorate. Education is slowly rediscovering that a historical date is a dry bone, but the story of the people who lived and died on that day is a feast. Even journalism at its best understands that a crisis is understood not merely through numbers, but through the personal stories of those affected. These narratives do more than just transmit information. They build collective identity. They tell us who we are, what we value, and who we are against. They create in-groups and out-groups, foster unity and dissent. We are constantly swimming in an ocean of manufactured narratives, each one vying to shape our perception of reality. Have we, in our hyper-connected age, simply traded the campfire for the algorithm, outsourcing our storytelling to powerful entities with their own agendas? This leads us to an uncomfortable, almost paradoxical question. If we are so exquisitely tuned to receive the world through story, are we then living inside a collective fiction? Our nations, our economies, our social norms, are these not all stories we have collectively agreed to believe in? Grand narratives that hold immense power precisely because we have forgotten they are narratives. Money is a story of trust. Borders are stories written in ink and blood. The value of a diamond is a story of scarcity and desire, meticulously crafted. These fictions are not necessarily false. They are functional. They allow for complex, large-scale cooperation among millions of strangers. They are the tools that built our world. But a tool can also become a weapon. The same narrative impulse that fosters empathy and community can be harnessed to sow division and hatred. The same story that inspires can also blind. The most potent and dangerous stories are the ones we no longer recognize as stories, the ones that feel as solid and real as the ground beneath our feet. When does the cradle of meaning become a cage of dogma? Perhaps the crucial point is not to escape narrative, an impossible task for a creature of our design, but to become aware of the narratives we inhabit, to read them as carefully as we would a book, questioning their authors, their motives, their silences. Fiction can be the most powerful tool for understanding reality, or the most invisible of chains. The difference lies in knowing we are inside a story, and understanding that we have a hand, however small, in its writing. So we must constantly ask, is this my story, or is it one I was simply handed? And if the future is a story we are all composing together, what responsibility do we bear for the tale we are telling right now? What happens when the story of tomorrow is written not with hope, but with a deep, pervasive dread for what has not yet and may never come to pass?